Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today, we're diving into the dark heart of Texas, where dusty highways stretch forever, and lonely gas stations hide things that should never be seen. This is 20 true late-night gas station stories from Texas. These aren't myths. These are real accounts from clerks, truckers, and travelers who saw things they can't explain. Phantom children, burnt footprints, locked doors that open on their own, and gas stations that vanish after midnight. But before we begin, don't make the mistake most viewers do. Hit subscribe now, because what's waiting in these stories remembers who listens. And who disappears? Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Because here, the night is just getting started. Let's dive into the darkness. They say nothing good ever happens after midnight out on the Texas highways, but that's not quite right. Most times, nothing happens at all. That's the real danger. The flatness, the silence, the hours stretching on like thread unraveling. From a spool. I worked graveyard shifts for nearly 7 years at a Valero gas station just off I-20 between Midland and Odessa, right near the edge of where the desert gives up trying to grow anything and just lets the dirt bake. The kind of place where the stars shine cruel and cold and the wind sounds like it's whispering secrets no one wants to hear. It was an ugly little station. The kind of place that didn't get tourists, just truckers with cracked windshields, oil workers with grime on their boots, and the occasional tired local too broke to go anywhere better. We had 2 pumps, a flickering soda machine, and one of those awful fluorescent lights that made you look like a corpse in the mirror by the bathroom. Started working there after my marriage fell apart. My ex took the kids and moved to Lubbock. I couldn't sleep at night anyway, so why not get paid for it? Most nights were slow. Sometimes whole hours would pass without a single customer. I'd stock shelves, mop the same damn tiles again and again, sip burnt coffee that tasted like metal and regret. The only real excitement came when the raccoons tried to break into the dumpster out back. But I remember the night the boy came, and like it just happened. I can still hear the squeak of the cooler door, still see the way the milk carton crumpled in his little hands. This was back in January. Cold for Texas. The kind of cold that bites right through denim and flannel and leaves you wondering why your bones feel hollow. It was exactly 2:14. A.M. I remember because I just looked at the clock behind the counter, thinking I had 3 more hours of nothing before the day guy came in. The store was empty, quiet. The wind outside had died down, and all I could hear was the humming of the coolers and the soft buzz of that one light in the corner that always seemed like it was about to go out. Then I heard the door chime. Ding. You'd think I'd be used to it after hundreds of shifts, but it made me jump. It always did, especially on nights when it had been too quiet for too long. I turned, expecting a trucker or maybe one of the meth head regulars who came in for off-brand energy drinks and scratched lottery tickets. But it was a boy, a little boy. Couldn't have been older than 8, maybe 7. He walked in barefoot. Now, I don't just mean without shoes. I mean barefoot, no socks, no nothing. Just dirty feet on freezing tile. His skin was pale, almost bluish, and his hair stuck to his forehead like he'd been sweating, even though it was freezing out. He wore these thin little pajama pants and a t-shirt that looked 2 sizes too small. There was a tear down the side and a stain that might have been blood or chocolate. I couldn't tell. He didn't say a word. Just walked straight past me, like he knew exactly where he was going. Hey kid, I called out, more confused then. Anything. Where's your folks? Nothing. Not even a glance. He headed for the coolers in the back, the ones with the milk and orange juice. He opened the cooler door, stood there for a second, then reached in and pulled out a pint-sized milk carton. You know the kind, the ones you get in elementary school cafeterias. He stared at it like it was the only thing in the world that made sense, then opened it and started drinking. It was the way he drank it that got to me. It wasn't messy, like kids usually are. He tilted the carton back and didn't stop until it was empty. Drained it in one long pull like he'd been dying of thirst. Then he dropped it on the floor and turned around. Still hadn't said a word. I stepped out from behind the counter, trying not to startle him. "Hey, buddy, are you lost? You okay?" He looked up at me with these pale, pale eyes. Gray, almost white. And his mouth was just slightly open, like he wanted to say something but didn't quite remember how. I took another step toward him. That's when he pointed, not at me, not at the door, but at the back room. The storage area where we kept the mop buckets and expired chip boxes. The door was always locked. He pointed at it, then started walking. Wait, I reached out, not sure what I meant to do. Maybe stop him, maybe just make sure he didn't get hurt. He walked straight to that locked door, reached out, and without a key, without touching the handle, it opened. Just swung open like it had been waiting for him. And he walked through. Door slammed shut behind him. I stood there, stunned. It was like my brain refused to register what had just happened. I wasn't high, I wasn't drunk. I hadn't slept much, but this wasn't some dream. I ran over to the door, pulled on it. Locked. Tried the key. Didn't work. It was like the lock had changed. That's when I noticed the floor. Right where the boy had stood, right where he dropped the milk carton, there were footprints. Bare footprints. Scorched into the tile. Not wet. Not muddy. Burned. Little. Black marks, perfectly shaped, as if he'd stepped in fire. I backed away. Locked the front door. Called the cops. When they showed up 20 minutes later, the prints were gone. So was the milk carton. And the storage room door was locked again. And my key worked just fine. They looked at me like I was crazy. Asked if I'd fallen asleep. Asked if maybe I'd had a little too much cold medicine. I told them to check the cameras. They did. The footage showed me standing at the counter, then turning, then walking toward the back. But there was no boy. The cooler never opened. The storage door never moved. They left without filing a report. I couldn't sleep for 2 days after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Not scared, not lost. Just empty. Like someone had hollowed him out. I tried to find reports. Missing children in the area. Looked through news archives. Nothing. No kids matching that description. Nobody coming in from the cold barefoot and freezing. A week later, I quit. But here's the part that really stuck with me. 2 months after I left, I got a call from Julio, the guy who took over my shift. He sounded shaken. Said a woman had come in around 3 a.m., hysterical. Said her son had disappeared out back while she was pumping gas. Said he'd been barefoot, wearing pajamas. Said he'd been thirsty. They never found him. Julio told me, voice shaking, that there were 2 footprints burned into the floor next to the cooler. Just 2. He said they were smaller than mine. He said they were fresh. I never went back to that gas station. Never drove that stretch of I-20 again. Because sometimes I still dream about that boy. About how he looked at me. About what might have been behind that door. And I keep wondering something I wish I could forget. What would have happened if I'd followed him through? The night Ellie filled her tank at the Shell station just outside San Marcos, something felt off before the pump even clicked on. She'd driven late from Wimberley after dinner with her sister, a quiet Tuesday night in August, the kind of heavy, insect humming dark that soaked the hill country in silence like a wet towel. The roads had been mostly empty. A few deer in the ditch, the red glow of taillights a half mile ahead now and then. She wasn't scared of driving at night, but something in the air had that coppery weight that feels like blood on the tongue. She told herself it was just the heat. The station was empty except for one truck idling out front, no driver in sight. The lights buzzed overhead, giving off a sickly yellow halo that didn't seem to push the dark back very far. She parked at pump 6, got out, and swiped her card. The reader chirped, screen blinking through the usual prompts. She selected 87. Then the static started, not from the radio. In her car, she always turned that off when she pumped gas, but from the overhead speakers, faint at first. Just a kind of electrical murmur, like someone adjusting an old antenna. Ellie frowned and glanced up. The station had a local FM mix playing through tinny speakers, always the same generic country, or soft rock that no one really listened to. But now it wasn't music. The static thickened into a scratchy voice, like someone whispering too close to a microphone with a bad cord. "Don't?" Ellie froze. "He's beneath you." She looked around. Nothing. Just her. The dark parking lot and the distant hum of the truck's engine. The voice came again, garbled, twisted in the way old cassette tapes used to sound when they'd been left on a dashboard too long. Double quotes. He single quotes s beneath you. She stepped back from the pump, glancing at the concrete beneath her shoes. Cracked and oil-stained. Nothing there. Her reflection in the window of the station store caught her eye and her stomach dropped. She wasn't smiling, but the reflection was not just a twitch or a mistake in the glass either. It was grinning, wide and wolfish, lips peeled back from her teeth. She blinked, spun around, heart hammering in her throat. No one was behind her. She turned back to the window. The reflection was normal again, expressionless, the way she'd actually been standing. Her pulse slowly came down. She finished pumping the gas with shaky hands and got the hell out of there. The truck was still idling as she pulled past it. A Dodge Ram, paint sun-bleached and cracked. No one in the driver's seat. No one in the cab. She didn't sleep well that night. Ellie didn't consider herself easily rattled. 30-6. Divorced nurse at the rehab clinic near the university. She'd seen all kinds of things working night shifts. Patients talking to the corners of rooms, drug psychosis, full seizures. Hell, her ex-husband used to sleepwalk and hold conversations in his sleep like a goddamn ghost. But none of that felt like what she saw at the pump. The next morning, she stopped back by the station on her way to work. She didn't want to, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. The clerk behind the counter was a bearded guy in a Longhorns hoodie. She asked if there'd been any issues with the speaker system. "Nah, not that I know of." "You mean like with the pumps?" "More like the radio. Static, weird voices maybe?" He gave her a squinty look, then chuckled. "You probably picked up a college prank or something. That happens. We're right between two stations, KTSW and some Christian AM channel. Sometimes it overlaps." She didn't argue. When she left, she made herself glance at pump 6 again. There was a woman pumping gas now, nothing unusual, except Ellie slowed her car as she drove past. The woman's hair was dark, pulled into a ponytail. Same height, same build. When she looked up and met Ellie's eyes, the smile on her face was too wide, too knowing. She didn't wave, just watched her leave. That night, Ellie dreamed she was trapped in a tunnel, something breathing below her, deep in the earth. She couldn't see it, just heard it scraping. Something dry, long, nails dragging along limestone. The next few days passed like fog. She kept telling herself it was nothing, but her phone began glitching, flickering, freezing. Once, while texting her sister, the screen went black and then showed her own camera, just her face in bed, lit by the glow dot, except the smile on her face in the camera wasn't hers. She wasn't smiling. It happened again at work. The rehab center had mirrors in the bathrooms, and once, While washing her hands, she caught her reflection looking just a half-second too long. Like it didn't want to leave when she did. She stopped using the mirrors. Then the nurse's station. Radio started acting up. At first it was normal low-volume oldies station to soothe the patients. Then the static came, and the voice. She was the only one who heard it. "He's beneath you." Sometimes it said it slow. Sometimes it said it backwards. Once, in the middle of helping a patient to bed, it whispered through the intercom, "Don't. Turn around." She didn't single quotes T. The breaking point came a week later. Ellie had taken to avoiding that gas station entirely, but her tank ran low late one night on her way home from a shift. She told herself she was being ridiculous. She was an adult. She pulled into a different station, a Chevron this time, far from the other one, Pump 6. She didn't mean to choose it. It just happened. As soon as the nozzle clicked, the static began. This time it wasn't subtle. The speaker screamed. The garbled voice shouted so loud it made her flinch. "He's beneath you." And something moved. She saw it. Not directly, but in the reflection of her driver's side window. A shape under the concrete. Like watching something crawl just beneath ice. A long, pale hand pushed up against the pavement from below, pressing the shape of a palm into the ground like the skin of a drum. Fingers spread. The concrete breathed. She ran. Left the nozzle hanging. Drove home with her hands trembling on the wheel. She didn't sleep. Didn't work the next day. She tried telling her sister, but the words sounded insane coming out of her mouth. Her sister laughed nervously and said she needed rest. Maybe a vacation. Maybe to call Dr. Wilkins again, that therapist from 2 years ago. But Ellie knew what she saw. And the reflection wasn't done with her. The mirrors in her apartment all showed her smiling now. No matter her expression, always smiling. Always with teeth. Her phone glitched constantly. Siri activated on her own. One night, when she turned it on to call 911 during a panic attack, the screen didn't show the keypad. It showed a dark tunnel, dirt walls, flickering light, and something crawling toward the camera. A pale, bald head, too long. Eyes like marbles in mud. No nose. Just slits. Then the screen went black. She smashed the phone. But it didn't matter, because the next morning, when she stood in the shower and glanced down, she saw a long, white finger poking up through the drain. Just the tip, like it was tasting the air, and she screamed. But no sound came. Only static. Somewhere beneath the world, something moved, and it knew her name. It was a gas station on the edge of Amarillo, one of those last chance joints just off the highway, where the world starts to thin out and the sky gets so big it feels like it's pressing down on you. The kind of place where the linoleum floors are always scuffed, and the humming from the coolers is louder than the radio playing Merle Haggard on a loop. Nothing about it was special, the kind of stop you forget the moment you leave. That's what Darren figured when he pulled in that first Friday. He was driving from Albuquerque, heading toward Dallas for work. Freelance road surveyor, contracted by the state mostly. Boring stuff. Take measurements, mark up maps, send in reports, move on. But it paid well enough and kept him moving, which he liked. Darren wasn't the type to sit still too long. He had a knack for making himself forget places and people. That day he'd been nursing a hangover and low-grade dread, a kind of gray mood that had stuck to him for weeks. He pulled into the station because the headache behind his eyes was getting worse, and he needed caffeine bad. The sign above the store buzzed with half-lit letters. Big Mike's, fuel, food, coffee. The gas pump clicked weird, like it was coughing up fumes instead of gas, and the air smelled like scorched rubber and something sour baking in the sun. Inside, the place was cool and dim. Rows of stale chips, dusty snack cakes, and an entire aisle dedicated to beef jerky. The woman at the counter didn't look up. Darren made his way to the back corner, where the coffee sat in glass pots that looked like they hadn't been scrubbed since the Reagan administration. He poured himself a cup and took it to the little stand-up mirror by the door. He didn't think about it, just checking if he looked half decent, if the circles under his eyes were as bad as they felt. That's when he saw him. The man in the mirror looked just like Darren, but older. Mid-60s maybe, skin leathery and pale, eyes sunken but sharp. Same scar under the chin from a bike spill at age 9. Same tiny mole near the left temple. Same jawline. Same everything. But the hair was thinner, grayer, and he wore a dusty black Stetson tilted low over one brow. And he was smiling not kindly, but like he knew something. Darren DIDN single quotes T dot, and then he winked. Darren spun around, heart thudding. There was no one behind him. Just the quiet store, the humming fridge, and the clerk now chewing her gum too loudly. When he looked back at the mirror, it was just his own reflection. 38, bleary-eyed, red-nosed Darren. No Stetson. No smile. He didn't say anything to the woman at the counter as he paid. She handed him a crumpled receipt and went right back to scrolling her phone. Outside, the sun was brutal. The coffee was bitter. The air smelled wrong. He should have let it go. Just chalked it up to exhaustion, dehydration, whatever. But it gnawed at him all the way to Dallas. That wink. A week later, he was passing through Amarillo again. Friday. He almost didn't stop at Big Mike's, but his curiosity had fermented into something stronger. Not fear, not yet. Something closer to obsession. The store looked exactly the same, empty, humming, too quiet. He walked straight to the mirror. No one winked back. But when he asked the woman at the counter if she remembered him from last week, she squinted at him like he was trying to sell her something. Then said, "You mean the old guy? The one in the black hat?" Darren froze. "What old guy?" "Looks like you," she said, popping her gum. "Same jaw, same face, just older. Comes in every Friday around the same time. Just buys black coffee. Doesn't say a word. Thought he was your dad or something." She said it like it was nothing. Like this sort of thing happened all the time. Darren tried to laugh it off, but it came out wrong, tight and choked. He drove to Dallas again, but didn't sleep right that night, or any night after. The next Friday, he waited. He got to Big Mike's an hour early and sat in his car with the windows down, pretending to mess with his maps and notes. The day was hot still, and the inside of the car began to feel like an oven. But he didn't move. Then, around 11:42 a.m., he saw him. The man in the Stetson. Same build, same walk, like watching a movie of himself 30 years from now. The old man moved with stiff but deliberate steps, like his joints had calcified, but his resolve hadn't. He didn't look around, didn't hesitate. Just pushed through the door, went straight to the coffee pot, poured himself a cup, and drank it standing by the same mirror. Darren got out of the car and followed. He entered the store just as the man was raising the cup to his lips. The reflection in the mirror caught Darren's eye first, and what he saw chilled him. The old man, looking straight at the glass, not at himself, but at Darren in the reflection behind him. Their eyes locked for a moment. Then the older man smiled again. This time he didn't wink. He just turned and walked out, slow and steady, never once looking back. Darren tried to follow, but by the time he pushed the door open, the man was gone. Not walking to a car, not heading down the road, just gone, like he'd never been there. He spent the weekend in a motel outside Amarillo, sleep-deprived and frantic, trying to convince himself it was a prank or a trick of the mind. But it kept getting worse. Each Friday, The man would return always alone, always drinking black coffee in silence, always staring straight into the mirror as if watching Darren. Watch him. The clerk, Becky, finally said it out loud on the fourth Friday. You sure you're not messing with me? She asked, narrowing her eyes. 'Cause you look just like him, but he's, I don't know, older, sadder. Sadder. That? Word stuck. Darren stopped driving east after that. He rented a trailer in Viga, about 30 minutes from Amarillo, and waited. Every Friday, he'd drive to Big Mike's. Sometimes he'd try to confront the man, even waited by the pumps to catch him. But the man always managed to vanish. Slipping through the cracks of the world like fog. Then, in late October, Darren didn't show up. Becky said it like it was normal. Well, she told the sheriff when he came asking, the old one still comes. Every Friday, like clockwork. Coffee, mirror, then poof. They found Darren's truck abandoned off a service road outside of Canyon, 20 miles from town. Still had gas in the tank. His maps were in the back seat, some with scribbles and circles and notes about mirrors and reflections. No signs of a struggle. No prints but his own. Search parties came and went. Dogs sniffed around the brush for weeks. But Darren was gone. It's been a year now. The old man still shows up every Friday. Becky won't talk to reporters anymore. She moved down to Lubbock in June and said she'd never step foot in Amarillo again. Said it was something in the air. Or the glass. Now a new clerk runs the counter. Young kid. Doesn't ask questions, but folks still talk. Some say Darren found a wormhole, a rip in time. Others whisper darker things, that the man in the Stetson isn't Darren's future, but something else entirely. A mimic, a placeholder. A shadow walking through the seams of reality, keeping the ritual alive. And every Friday, if you stand in front of that mirror at Big Mike's, you might catch a glimpse. Not just of your reflection, but of what's coming. Something inevitable. Something that smiles just a little too long, and if it winks, you should leave and never come back. The gas station sat alone off Highway 6, just south of Waco, where the concrete bled into dry, cracked pastureland and the buzz of cicadas never seemed to die down. It was a squat, one-story building with a half-faded Phillips 66 sign that flickered. Now and then when the wind hit the power lines just right. Old tire stacks leaned against the rusted chain-link fence, and the ice machine out front hadn't worked since '09. People didn't stop unless they had to, and those who didn't linger. The station had 2 bathrooms, side by side, near the rear of the store behind a metal rack of discount chips and expired beef jerky. One was labeled simply restroom, and the other, more curiously, bathroom. Number A. That one always had an out-of-order sign taped across the door. Same handwritten note for the last 10 years. But the door never sagged on its hinges. No water stains bled through the tile ceiling. No foul smell leaked beneath the threshold. It was clean as a whistle. That was the part that bugged people. Most employees didn't ask about it. The ones who did never ask twice. Deshaun was new. Just turned 23 and needed a job after flunking out of TSTC in Waco. His cousin Ray put in a word with the manager, and Deshaun got the overnight shift. Midnight to 8 a much happens, Ray had said. Just a lot of silence and the occasional tweaker needing to piss or steal gas. It was his 3rd night on the job when he noticed the door. It had a strange pull to it, not the kind that jumps out at you, more like the way a smell lingers or a song you can't quite place starts playing in the back of your mind. Bathroom number 2. He figured maybe it was just storage now, or maybe something was wrong with the plumbing and the owner didn't want to shell out to fix it. Still, something about it itched at the base of his neck. At around 3:12 am, remembered the time exactly. though he didn't know why Deshaun was stacking Gatorades in the cooler when he heard the sound of a latch click. Not the front door, but something further back. Something too close. He leaned out from behind the cooler and saw the door to bathroom #2. Open about 6 inches. He stared at it for a while, long enough to wonder if someone had come in while he was restocking, and slipped past him. He hadn't heard the bell chime, though. He walked toward it, slow, quiet, just to shut it. Just to make sure. The light inside was on. The restroom was clean, spotless. A long counter with 2 sinks, polished chrome faucets, white tiles on the walls, and a big rectangular mirror running the length of the wall above the sinks. It smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something else, something metallic. He didn't step inside. He stood in the doorway, leaning just enough to see in. Nothing out of the ordinary, except ... in the mirror he saw someone else. Not behind him. No, that would have made more sense. This figure was in the mirror, standing right where he would be standing if he'd taken a step in. A young white guy, maybe early 20s. Longish brown hair, beard scruff, dark hoodie soaked at the chest like he'd been out in the rain. But the look on his face was what stopped Deshaun cold. Eyes wide, mouth open like a silent scream. Hands braced against the counter as if he was about to vomit. Blood dripping from his nose. He looked trapped, then the image blinked out. Gone. Just a normal mirror now, reflecting the empty room and Deshaun's face hovering in the doorway, pale and breathless. He shut the door fast, pressing his palm to the cool metal like he was trying to seal something in. Hell no, he muttered to himself. But he didn't leave. He stood there for maybe a full minute, heart thudding in his ears, and then returned to the counter. The next night, he brought it up to Ray in a roundabout way. Hey, UH. That other bathroom, Deshaun said casually, opening a bag of pretzels. Behind the counter. Bathroom number 2, it ever work? Ray didn't look up from his phone. Nah, out of order. Yeah, but like, what's wrong with it? Ray paused, and for a second the joking tone slipped from his voice. Just don't open it, that's all. Deshaun frowned. But I'm serious. Ray locked eyes with him. I mean it, don't. That was the last they said on it. The 5th night, a customer came in just after 2 a.m. A girl, early 30s maybe. Hoodie over a tank top, arms covered in little burn scars like she smoked meth out of light bulbs. She was twitchy, glancing around like someone was following her. Bought a pack of Newports and asked for the restroom key. Deshaun handed it to her, pointing toward the first bathroom, but she gave him a weird look. Other one's open, she said. He blinked. No, it ain't. She didn't answer. She just walked toward the back by the time he stepped out from behind the counter. The door to bathroom number 2 was wide open again. The light inside had that same sterile lemon glow like a hotel restroom or a hospital waiting room. The woman was inside, standing at the mirror, one hand on the faucet like she was about to wash her face. But she wasn't moving. Ma'am? Deshaun called. She didn't respond. He took one step closer, then she looked up, not at him. At her reflection, and her face twisted into the most hopeless look he'd ever seen. Like she was watching something. Happened to someone she couldn't help, someone she used to be. In the mirror, Deshaun could see her reflection was moving differently. It raised its hand when she didn't. Its mouth opened wide, impossibly wide, splitting like a second jaw. And something inside shimmered, something wet and twitching. The reflection leaned closer to the glass. The real woman backed away, screaming. Now, then the lights in the bathroom flickered and the mirror shattered. From the inside out, the glass burst out like an explosion, jagged shards catching the fluorescent lights. The woman disappeared in the chaos. When Deshaun rushed in just 2 seconds later, she was gone. Not collapsed, not hiding. Just gone. The mirror was whole again. The faucet still dripped faintly. The air was thick with lemon cleaner and blood. He never told the police. He didn't see the point. There were no cameras inside the restroom. Her name didn't show up on the receipt paid. In cash, no vehicle outside. Nothing to trace. He quit the job 2 days later, packed his shit, and moved back to Lubbock with his mom. Ray took over the night shift again. 3 weeks passed before Ray went missing. Last person to see him was the new daytime clerk, Marla. She said he looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days, and kept pacing near the back. He clocked in at 11:58 p.m. No one saw him leave. They found the station abandoned the next morning. Lights on, register untouched. Both bathroom doors closed. When the manager came to check the security footage, the hard drive had been fried. Literally melted inside the casing. Now it's me. I took the job because I needed something quiet. Something simple. The other clerks won't talk about the past. They just shrug when I ask why we don't take this out of order sign down, but I've seen it. The door is still open sometimes. Always around 3:12 a.m., always with the light already on. I keep the bathroom key around my neck, even though I never use it. Like it's a ward against something. The mirror still works. It shows people I've never met. People who never walk out. I watch their mouths move. I memorize their faces. I wake up thinking I hear them screaming in the pipes, and now I see myself in there sometimes. Not my reflection, me, paler, blood around my mouth. Staring back, mouthing one word over and over. I can't hear it, not yet, but I'm afraid I will. One night, the volume will turn up. They all look like that, bloody, frightened, gone, and I think I'm next. It was late September when the desert started to cool down at night, and Highway 62 heading out of El Paso turned black and hollow after dark. That's the stretch where they say strange things happen, always have. Folks talk about odd lights. Over the sand, phantom hitchhikers, even shadowy creatures near the Guadalupe Mountains. But people talk a lot out there, and the heat cooks your brain just enough to make you believe anything. Travis didn't believe in much, though. He was a mechanic by trade, 38, recently divorced, and driving his busted old Silverado. Out past Huco tanks to clear his head. The silence out there suited him better than the sounds of a silent house, or the way his wife's perfume still clung to the curtains. It was about 11:40 p.m. when he saw her. She was standing just off the shoulder of the road, facing away from the highway, a slim figure in a pale dress, the hem fluttering slightly in the wind. Her long black hair hung heavy down her back, and a green ribbon tied around her neck caught the reflection of his headlights like a cat's eye. He slowed instinctively, even as the more sensible part of him urged not to. No good reason for a girl like that to be out there, and certainly not alone. But something about her, not the helplessness exactly, but the stillness, felt like gravity. Pulling at him. She turned as the truck pulled up, and she smiled, just barely. Her skin was pale, almost chalky, but not sickly. Her eyes looked like they hadn't been afraid of anything in a very long time. Need a ride? He asked, leaning across the seat to pop the passenger door. She nodded, and that ribbon dipped with her head. Where to? East, she said softly. Just for a bit. I'll tell you when. He didn't press her. She didn't smell like fear or sweat or dust, just a faint scent of lavender like old soap. She folded her hands neatly in her lap, the ribbon bow pressed against the soft notch of her throat. Travis didn't talk. Neither did she. The silence was so complete that he started hearing the engine in a new way. Every pop and stutter like a language he didn't understand. About 10 miles out, she finally spoke again. Thank you for stopping. No trouble, he said, glancing at her. Not safe to be out here alone. I know. Another pause. Then she looked at him, and this time her expression shifted into something heavier. Do me a favor? Sure. If I ever take off this ribbon. Her voice was careful now, like she was choosing each word. Don't look. Just let me be. Keep driving? Promise? He let out a nervous laugh, trying to brush off the weird chill running up his arms. You serious? I'm serious. He looked at the ribbon again, at the way it clung like it had been there forever, green against her throat like moss on. A gravestone. Okay, he said. I won't look. She nodded once, satisfied. They kept going. Past the salt flats and the empty motels, deeper into nowhere. The clock on the dash blinked 12:19 a.m. A mile marker flashed by. Travis couldn't remember the last time they passed another car. That's when he noticed something odd. His gas gauge hadn't moved. Not at all. He'd started at a little under half a tank, and they'd been driving nearly 40 minutes. But the needle stayed right where it was. He tapped the glass. Nothing. He looked at her again. She was staring straight ahead, expression blank. Her hands trembled now, just slightly, as if something was coming. She whispered, almost to herself. It's getting close. What is? She didn't answer. Just reached up slowly and touched the edge of the ribbon. His heart spiked. Wait, you're not... Remember what you said. Her fingers worked at the knot. Don't, he said, louder now. You said I shouldn't. I did, she said. But I need to take it off. The ribbon came loose. She pulled it. Free in one smooth motion, like a magician tugging a scarf from a sleeve. Travis tried to keep his eyes forward. He really did. He focused on the lines on the road, the empty horizon, the distant shimmer of lights that might have been oil rigs. Or stars. But curiosity isn't a thing you put away like a wrench in a drawer. It's a claw that digs at you, whispers in your ear. He looked, just for a second. Her head wasn't gone, exactly. It hadn't fallen. It had shifted, sliding sideways off. Her neck like a busted hinge, still hanging on by something unseen. Her face didn't change. Her eyes still looked ahead, unfocused. Her mouth was closed, tight and peaceful. The ribbon lay in her lap like a shed skin. Travis screamed. The truck veered. He slammed on the brakes, the tires locking up on the asphalt with a shriek. When they stopped, he was panting, heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted out. He turned to look again. She was gone. The passenger seat was empty, but the ribbon remained. It lay curled and lifeless on the seat like a little green snake, and no matter how many times he blinked, it didn't disappear. He touched it once. It was warm. He climbed out of the truck, nearly tripping, looked around, desert in every direction. No footprints, no sound, no wind. He never made it home. They found him parked on the shoulder the next morning, the truck idling. In neutral, driver's side door open, Travis sitting upright behind the wheel like he was waiting for a red light. His eyes were bloodshot, lips cracked, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. When the sheriff asked what happened, Travis said nothing for a long time. Then he whispered, "She told me not to look. They took him in for observation." Shock. Maybe PTSD. No signs of drugs or alcohol. He didn't talk much after that, but when he did, it was always the same. About the ribbon. About how her head had tilted, how she'd kept staring forward even when it wasn't possible. He never asked if anyone believed him. The ribbon was never found, and no one ever saw the girl again. No missing persons. No one matching her description. But over the years, truckers driving that same stretch of highway reported seeing a girl. In white, standing still in the dark, green ribbon gleaming faintly in the headlights. Some said they picked her up. Most said they didn't. Those who did? They never talked about it. And one of them, a young man from Austin with a long scar on his cheek, was found 2 weeks later wandering barefoot outside of Del City. He wouldn't. Stop mumbling the same phrase. She said not to look. She said not to look. Bluebonnet Gas sat about 6 miles east of Bastrop, right off Highway 71, tucked just far enough off the road that if you didn't know to look for it, you'd miss the little gravel turn-in entirely. It was the kind of place folks only stopped at if they were on fumes or if they'd grown up around there and didn't want to deal with the lines at Buc-ee's. The building itself looked like it hadn't been updated since the mid-'80s. Dirty yellow stucco, a drooping aluminum awning, and a faded sign with a cartoon bluebonnet that had long since turned a chalky shade of gray. Inside, the place smelled of coffee, oil, and something sour that seemed to live beneath the floor tiles. Caleb McCree had been working the graveyard shift at Bluebonnet for the past 7 years. He was the kind of man who liked routine. He liked that the register never rang more than once or twice between midnight and 6, liked that he could drink his Folgers in peace and listen to Coast AM on the radio. People came and went on the highway, shadows and a blur of headlights, but out here, time stood still, except for the lights. They started flickering about 2 months ago. Every morning, right at 4:44 a.m., the fluorescent strips lining the awning would buzz and dim, blinking in this arrhythmic stutter like they were trying to communicate in Morse code. It would last for exactly 44 seconds, then snap back to normal dot at first. Caleb figured it was faulty wiring. Bluebonnet was old, and the owner, a half-senile rancher named Joe Braxton, wasn't exactly known for upkeep. Caleb mentioned it, and Joe said he'd send a guy. That guy never showed. Caleb stopped asking Dot, then one morning, curiosity got the better of him. He checked the security footage, and there it was. Every night at 4:44 a.m., while the lights flickered, a figure appeared at the edge of the frame right where the gravel met the grass by the propane tanks. A tall man, all black from head to toe, with no visible face or features. But the truly unsettling part was what came behind him. Something dragged in the dirt just out of clear resolution. It moved awkwardly, like dead weight. Sometimes it looked like a tarp, other times like a body bag. Whatever it was, it made a furrow in the gravel that should have been visible the next morning. But there was never any sign of it. No drag marks, no footprints, no tall man. Caleb didn't sleep much after that. He told himself it was a glitch in the video compression, maybe a bug in the motion detection system. But the image burned in his mind. That tall, faceless man walking with some heavy burden behind him, appearing and disappearing like clockwork. He started recording the screen on his phone. Didn't trust the DVR not to lose the footage. Night after night, he watched the figure emerge from the darkness, pass through the field of view, and vanish. Sometimes it moved faster, sometimes slower. Once, the figure turned slightly toward the camera. Caleb swore he saw the glint of something like teeth. He didn't tell anyone. Not Joe, not his brother. Not the handful of meth zombies and truckers. That came through at odd hours. Then came the girl. It was a Thursday, raining hard. Caleb was refilling the jerky rack when he heard the door chime. He turned and saw her, soaking wet, maybe 19, barefoot, wearing a yellow sundress that stuck to her like wet tissue paper. She looked dazed, pale, but calm, like she didn't quite know where she was. "Phone?" she asked softly. "Can I use your phone?" He pointed toward the wall-mounted landline. She stared at it for a few seconds, then turned and walked out the door without another word. The time on the register said 4:43 a.m. Caleb's stomach dropped. He bolted around the counter and rushed out under the awning. Rain soaked him instantly. He looked left, then right. No girl, no footprints in the gravel. He turned toward the propane tanks. There, just beyond the reach of the flickering lights, the tall man stood. The girl was lying at his feet. Caleb couldn't move, couldn't scream. He just stood there, every nerve in his body screaming to run, but his legs were sunk into the gravel like concrete. Then, just like that, the lights snapped back to normal. The man was gone. So was the girl. When Caleb reviewed the footage later, the camera showed him bolting out the door, but nothing else. No man, no girl, just flickering lights and a half-drunk. Coffee sitting on the counter. That was the first time he called the cops. They came out, took a report, looked at the footage. Told him it was a hallucination, maybe brought on by sleep deprivation. Caleb insisted, showed them the phone videos. They watched in silence, but one of the deputies, the older one, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He said nothing at the time, but 2 days later, he came back alone. His name was Eddie Valdez. Said he'd been working in Bastrop County for over 30 years. Said the place where Bluebonnet stood used to be part of a family farm, the Grissams. Back in the 50s, they went missing. All of them. Parents, kids, even the farmhands. Number. Bodies were ever found. Just drag marks in the soil. They said it was a cult, a sacrifice, but no one was ever charged. The land changed hands a dozen times. Nothing ever lasted there. Farms failed. Cows got sick. People moved away. Then the gas station was built in the early 80s, and that's when the stories started. People vanishing at the pumps. Seeing strange lights in the field. One guy claimed his truck got dragged sideways across the lot in the middle of the night, like something big had latched onto it, but it always happened at the same time, 4:44 a.m. After Valdez left, Caleb started digging deeper. Found old property records, newspaper clippings, even a black and white photo of the original Grissom homestead. In the background of the photo, just past the barn, was a tall figure in shadow. No one had noticed it before, but it was there. Same height, same posture, dragging something. Caleb didn't know what it meant, only that it was getting worse. The lights flickered longer now. The figure came closer to the camera each night. Once, it stopped completely and stared directly into the lens. Static bled across the screen for a full minute. Then came the dreams. In them, Caleb stood alone in the station. Everything was quiet, then the lights would go out. He'd hear something heavy dragging behind him. He'd turn, and there'd be nothing. But the dragging would get louder, closer, until it was right beside him. And then he'd wake up. Except one morning he didn't. His body was found slumped against the cooler, eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-scream. Coroner said it was a heart attack. Stress-induced. They chalked it up to working nights for too long. But Eddie Valdez didn't believe that. He checked the footage from that morning. The camera feed cut out at exactly 4:44 a.m. when it came back on. The lights were fine, but the dragging sound kept playing on the audio feed, even though there was no one there. Bluebonnet gas is still open. Still cheap gas, still sour coffee. Still a place folks only stop when they're desperate. But if you ever find yourself driving through Bastrop in the dead of night, don't pull off for gas at that little gravel road. And whatever you do, don't. Be there at 4:44 a.m. because he's still walking, and now he's dragging something new. The first time Carlos heard the crying, it was just past 2:15 in the morning. That hour when the coastal fog rolls in from Corpus Christi Bay and wraps everything in a quiet so thick it feels like being buried in cotton. The convenience store off Route 286 had one of those old humming soda machines outside, a half-dead neon sign that read Bob's Fuel and Food, and 6 pumps, 3 of which hadn't worked in years. Pump 2 still sputtered along though. The credit card slot always sticky with salt air and the nozzle a little too loose. Carlos worked the graveyard, shift 5 nights a week. He'd taken the job after his brother's second stroke put him in a nursing home, and he needed to keep the lights on. He didn't mind it most nights. It was quiet. Dead, really. Just the occasional trucker with bloodshot eyes, some drunk teens looking for beef jerky and Monster Energy, and the regulars quiet folks, mostly. Old men buying scratch-offs and menthols. Women in scrubs picking up milk before heading home. The crying started soft, like a whimper carried by wind. Carlos had just restocked the cooler with bottles of Ozarka when he heard it. He stopped, still crouched in the fridge's cold breath, listening. It was faint, and for a moment he wondered if it was just the hum of the refrigeration units playing tricks on him. But then it came again, clearer this time and unmistakably human. A baby, out by the pumps. He stood slowly and glanced through the front windows. Nothing out there but that blue-silver mist crawling in from the Gulf and the soft glow of sodium lights pooling beneath the canopy. Pump 2 blinked like always, its backlight stuttering. He pushed through the door and stepped into the damp air, the plastic name badge on his chest flipping backward in the breeze. "Hello?" he called, peering around the side of the ice machine. The crying had stopped. "Someone out here?" Nothing. Just the far-off buzz of insects and the low churn of a barge horn somewhere across the water. He stepped out further, toward Pump 2, hands on his hips scanning the lot. No cars, no stroller, no movement. He waited a minute longer before shaking. His head and heading back inside Dot by 310, it happened again. The same sound, soft, pitiful, coming from just beyond the glass. This time he bolted out the door faster, sure someone was messing with him. He rounded the corner, practically jogging to the pump. Nothing. The crying stopped again as soon as he stepped outside. That's when he got the idea to check the Quinteru security footage. The monitors were ancient, grainy black and white displays stacked above the lotto machine in the corner of the store. Each screen had a 10-second delay and occasionally fuzzed out for no reason, like they were trying to tune into a dead channel. He hit rewind, watching himself move in jerky reverse out the door. The pump lot behind him empty. He went back to 213, just after he disappeared into the cooler. The front of the store sat still for a long moment. Then, from the far edge of the lot, a figure walked into frame. A woman, barefoot, wearing a pale hospital gown that flapped around her knees. Her hair hung in wet strings, and her skin was so white it seemed to glow against the dark. She moved slowly, shuffling as though walking underwater. Cradled in her arms was something small, wrapped in a swaddle of pink and blue. Carlos leaned closer, squinting at the screen. The woman approached Pump 2, looked over her shoulder just once, then knelt and placed the bundle on the concrete. A car seat, or a carrier. Definitely a baby inside. Then she stood and walked back the way she came. Faded into the mist. He fast-forwarded to the next frame. The car seat was gone. Carlos stared at the monitor for a long time. His heart thudded in his chest, loud in the silence. He played the footage again, over and over, always the same. The woman appears, leaves the carrier, walks away. The baby disappears. That was Monday night. By Tuesday, he'd convinced himself it was a glitch. A pre-recorded loop, maybe. Some weird overlap on the tape. He told himself stories to stay calm. This was just an old system acting up. A prank. A hallucination brought on by too many monster drinks and not enough sleep. Then Tuesday night, the crying came again. Same time, same place. This time it didn't stop right away. It kept going. Carlos stepped outside and stood beside Pump 2, heart hammering. The sound seemed to come from right below him. He crouched, pressing a hand to the concrete. It vibrated. Not like a car engine or a passing truck. It was softer than that. A faint, pulsing tremor, almost like something shifting underground. Then the crying ceased. He backed away, breath shallow, skin clammy. He didn't check the tapes that night. Wednesday, he called Bob. "Hey man," Carlos started, trying to sound casual. "The security tapes, how old are they?" "Old as hell," Bob muttered, chewing on something. "Why? Just, you ever have someone leave a baby out here, like abandoned? Ever have a woman in a hospital gown show up?" Bob paused. "You been drinking on the job?" "No." "You. Sleep last night?" Carlos hesitated. "Not really. Thought so." Bob chuckled. "Corpus gets in your head, man. Salt air and isolation. You're probably just hearing that cat again, the stray. People say it sounds like a baby sometimes." Carlos didn't argue, but he knew it wasn't a cat. That night, the crying didn't start at 2:15. It started at 1:30, and it didn't stop. Carlos sat behind the counter, eyes wide, the sound playing over and over in his ears like a scratched record. He covered his ears, turned on the radio, even stepped into the walk-in cooler, but it was no use. The crying followed him, muffled but present, like it was inside the walls. When he finally stepped outside, the fog had swallowed the lot. Visibility was down to 20 feet. The lights above Pump 2 flickered wildly, and the air smelled sharp like antiseptic and blood. The baby's cries were louder here, almost deafening. Carlos approached the pump with shaking hands. "Where are you?" he whispered. "Who are you?" The pump screen flashed blue, then black. The number 2 began scrolling across the display repeatedly. 222,222,222, then silence. The crying stopped. The lights steadied. The smell faded, but the concrete beneath Pump 2 had changed. There was a dark patch near the base. A stain, oily and black, ringed by something sticky. Carlos knelt and touched it with a rag. It came away red. Blood. He staggered back, gagging, and ran inside. He watched the tape again. The woman, the carrier, the vanishing, but this time after she left. The baby's blanket moved. Something crawled out. It was small, pale, crawling on hands and knees. But its limbs were too long, its eyes pitch black, mouth yawning open in a silent scream. It blinked toward the store, then the screen cut to static. Carlos didn't sleep that day. He didn't go home. He stayed at the store, sitting behind the counter with the lights on and every monitor turned off. His phone rang 6 times. He didn't answer it. At 2 a.m. on Thursday. He went outside for the last time. The mist had thickened to the point where he couldn't see the pumps from the door. But the crying was there. Not just one voice now. Multiple. Dozens. Babies, children, adults screaming, sobbing, moaning in pain or grief. All of them coming from the same place. Pump 2. Carlos stepped into the fog. He reached the pump by memory. Knelt beside the old stain. It was bigger now. Still wet. And then he heard a voice. Low, female, whispering directly into his ear. "You didn't take it." He turned. She was there. The woman in the hospital gown. Pale. Her mouth stretched into a grin, so wide it split the skin at her cheeks. Her eyes were gone, just black sockets. She held the baby out to him. Carlos screamed. They found the store empty the next morning. The footage showed Carlos walking into the mist. And then, for 7 hours, static. No one else came. No one left. But the crying, it never stopped. Even after they shut down the pumps. Even after they removed the cameras and boarded up the windows. Pump 2 still stands, abandoned now. The lot is overgrown. But people say if you pass through Corpus late at night and stop by that old station, even just to pee, you might hear it. A baby crying. And if you look too long in the fog, it might look back. The station sat alone off Route 281, about 15 miles north of Marble Falls, just before the road snaked through the low, rocky hills of Burnett County. If you weren't paying attention, you'd drive right past it. Most people did. The place looked dead, as if it had been abandoned sometime during the Carter administration and forgotten by God and the Department of Transportation. A crooked sign leaned out over the cracked blacktop lot, its white paint blistered and yellowed by the sun. In sloppy, red hand-painted letters, it read, "God GS, clean your tank, clean your soul." There were two pumps, both rusted shut. One had a shattered glass gauge, the other was so caked in bird droppings and desert dust it might have been part of a monument. Behind them sat a squat, square building of cinder blocks and peeling stucco, its front window so dirty you couldn't see inside during the day. But every night, from dusk to dawn, a sickly green light glowed faintly behind the grime, like a will-o'-the-wisp caught in a bottle. Nobody ever saw anyone go in or out, except the old man. Nobody ever saw a car at the pumps, or a receipt fluttering in the wind, or a bag of beef jerky bought through the dusty vending slot on the front door. And yet, people did stop there. Some said the old man had been there forever. Folks in Burnett County whispered that he'd served gas during the drought of '57, that he'd fought in Korea, that he'd died twice and came back both times, more dried out and leathery with each resurrection. Truth was, no one knew his name. Some called him Pastor Oil, some called him Methuselah, some just called him the God Gas Man. But no one called him a liar, and no one went looking for him without needing something they couldn't quite name. My cousin Jake stopped there once. That's how all this started for me. He was 22, working a string of dead-end security gigs and sleeping in his car half the time. Drove a Primer Gray 96 Caprice with no AC and a busted radio. Jake was restless, twitchy. He'd talk about lights in the woods out by Inks Lake, or how he'd hear whispers coming through the static of the radio, even when it wasn't plugged in. Then one night, he stopped at the station. I don't know what made him do it. He was low on gas, maybe. Or maybe he just saw the sign and something in his brain went sideways. He pulled in around 2 a.m. and the old man was there, just standing under the flickering overhead light like he'd been waiting. When Jake came back, he didn't talk about it. Not at first. But he was different. He moved slower, quieter. The way he looked at people was off. Not angry, not scared, just blank. Like someone had unplugged something inside him. He started giving away his stuff. All of it. His TV, his phone, his favorite battered cowboy boots. He said they didn't matter anymore. Said nothing mattered except keeping the tank clean. That was the first time I heard the phrase. He never explained it, just kept saying it, like a mantra. Then, after about 3 weeks of this, he disappeared. That's what brought me to Route 281. I wasn't close with Jake. We'd grown apart after high school, but I couldn't let that image go. Him standing in my doorway, pupils wide as dimes, whispering, "It's clean now, you don't have to worry." I started asking around. Found out he wasn't the only one. There was a woman from Bertram, used to be a nurse, who stopped talking after she pulled off at the station. Her family said she just sat on the porch all day after that, humming old hymns and staring into the trees. A kid from Lampasas, barely 17, went missing for a week and came back home with every piercing ripped out of his face and a Bible duct taped to the passenger seat of his Camaro. He told his mom he had to rebalance the fuel-to-spirit ratio, and then walked into the river and didn't come back up. They all stopped at God Gas, and they all came back wrong. I drove up there on a Sunday evening, just before sunset. The sky was a hot iron skillet bleeding orange and pink. The road was empty. My car's tank was full. I'd made sure of that. I wasn't there to get gas. I was there to see him. I pulled into the lot and parked beside the crumbling curb. The building looked smaller than I expected. There was a silence around it, heavy and pressurized, like the sound got squeezed out of the air. No insects chirped, no birds sang. The wind didn't even move the yellowed grass dot. Then he came out. He looked wrong. Not monstrous or ghostly, just wrong in that quiet, deep-down way that sets your guts to shivering. He was tall, impossibly. Thin, with skin like cracked leather and a face like a half-deflated basketball. His eyes were too small for his head. Or maybe his head was too big. It was hard to tell. He wore an old white shirt, buttoned to the throat, stained brown and yellow from sweat and years. His pants were grease-black and stiff as bark. He smiled at me, and my stomach turned. It was a smile that felt rehearsed. "You here for a fill-up?" he asked. His voice was like tires on gravel. I shook my head. "Just looking," he nodded, like he'd heard that before. "Most folks are." I asked him what God gas means. "What it says," he replied. "Clean fuel, clean soul. We purge both, one tank at a time." I said his pumps didn't work. He chuckled, a sound that reminded me of dry leaves scraping on pavement. "They ain't for gasoline." I must have looked confused, because he stepped closer and added, "Your engine can run on fumes, boy. But your soul, that's another story." I asked him what he did to the people who stopped here. He didn't answer, just looked up at the sign, squinting into the dying sunlight. Then he said, "Folks come here heavy, full of bad miles. I just help empty the tank." I asked him if Jake had come here. He said he didn't know names. Said he only knew conditions. Said Jake must have been running real dirty. That's when the air shifted. I don't know how else to describe it. One minute I was standing there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of his cryptic words, and the next, I was inside the building, even though I hadn't moved. The walls were lined with rows of tools, but not mechanical ones. They looked medical, surgical, but old, rust-flecked, bone-handled, and wrapped in greasy cloths. There were shelves full of glass jars filled with gray liquid and what looked like teeth or fingernails floating inside. The green light was stronger here, leaking from a cracked fixture above a rusted steel recliner bolted to the floor. The kind you'd see in a dentist's office from the 1950s. He gestured toward the chair. I backed away. Asked him what the hell this was. "A soul," he said slowly, "is like a fuel filter. Over time, it gets clogged. Guilt, grief, lust, violence, all that sludge. Can't run smooth like that. Can't run at all. I clean him. For free, my duty." I asked what happened to the people afterward. He gave me that same waxy, dead-eyed smile and said, "They're lighter, more efficient. They stop burning hot. They burn clean." I turned to leave, but the door was gone. I swear to God, it was gone. Just wall. Just cinder block and peeling paint. I looked back at the chair, and now it was occupied. Jake sat in it, or what was left of him. His eyes were hollow. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Tubes ran from his arms to the wall, where a rusted pump churned sluggishly, moving thick, dark fluid through murky glass. "You should have come sooner," the old man said, and his voice was no longer gravel. It was inside me, echoing, burrowing. Then I was outside again, just standing in the lot. My car was gone. The building was dark. No sign of life. No green light. Nothing. I walked back to the road and hitched a ride into Marble Falls with a trucker who didn't speak the whole way. That was 4 months ago. I don't sleep much now. I hear the hum of that pump when things get quiet, and sometimes, when I look at my reflection, I think I see tubing behind my eyes. You can't burn clean forever. Eventually, something's got to ignite. The vending machine sat like an afterthought in the far corner of the old bus station just off I-35 in Laredo, Texas, a red and silver relic from the early 90s, its faded Coke logo peeling, the glass front scuffed with fingerprints and grease. Smears, it hummed a low metallic drone like it was thinking about something. No one remembered who stocked it or who installed it. It had just always been there, wedged between the payphone no one used and a dusty bulletin board that hadn't changed since Clinton. Was President Dot, it never worked right. Folks would stick in their dollars, sometimes it'd take them, sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes it'd chew the bill up like it was hungry and leave nothing but frustration. And every so often, it'd light up like it was about to dispense a bag of Skittles or a Snickers, then make a strange grinding sound and return nothing. Just a hollow thunk and silence. People laughed about it mostly. Old things just temperamental. The bus drivers would say, sipping bitter coffee from styrofoam cups. She likes who she likes. But not everyone laughed. Last week, a man named Victor Herrera came through. Nobody knew him personally, just a drifter, probably mid-40s. Sunburned and twitchy, like he'd spent too many years on the road or too many nights listening to the wrong kind of thoughts. He parked a rusted-out Camry with Arizona plates just past the loading bay and stepped into the station around 10 at night. Sat around a while, mumbling to himself. Eventually, he wandered over to the vending machine and tried to buy something Reese's. Maybe. People said they heard the bill go in, the machine groan a little, then nothing. No candy. Victor stood there for a minute, jaw working like he was chewing something bitter. Then he muttered something real low and kicked the machine hard once, then again, and that's when it happened. The machine shook just a little. Not like from the kick, more like from inside. Then it whirred, clicked, and dropped 2 coins into the tray with a sound sharp enough to turn heads. Victor reached in and pulled them out. Stared for a long second, didn't say a word. Walked out. The next morning his car was still parked outside. Windows fogged a bit from the inside. But Victor was gone. Gone, like gone. No calls made from. The payphone, no tickets purchased, no sightings. His duffel bag was in the trunk, car keys in the ignition, half a bottle of Coke in the Q folder. Laredo PD came by, looked around, shrugged it off as a guy skipping town. But there were whispers. See, someone found the coins he dropped left on the seat inside the car, like he'd set them down carefully before vanishing. Silver dollar-sized but smooth, no faces or eagles. Just words, etched like with a razor. He KNOWS, that's all. And that vending machine. Still sitting there? Still humming. Still hungry. I worked night security at that bus station. Been there 5 years now. Not because I want to be, just what I ended up doing after the divorce and a layoff at the refinery. Pays okay, usually quiet, but I've noticed things. Little things. At first, the hum of the machine changes. Some nights it's low and steady, like a purr. Other nights it rises and falls, almost like breathing. I swear to God, sometimes it sounds like it's whispering soft, static whispers just under hearing. Can't quite catch the words, but they're there, sliding around the edge of thought. And the lights, sometimes they flicker, sure, but once or twice they've blinked in patterns. Like Morse code, maybe. I never learned it, but it feels deliberate. Like the machine's trying to talk. Last week, this kid came through, maybe 17. Hoodie, earbuds, skateboard tucked under one arm. He stood in front of the vending machine. For a good 5 minutes, just staring, not moving. I watched him on the monitors, something about his stillness crawling under my skin. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled dollar, and fed it in. The machine buzzed, dropped a Butterfinger. He didn't even flinch, just picked it up, turned, and walked out into the dark. But here's the thing. We don't stock Butterfingers. Haven't for years. And I know that machine hasn't been serviced. Last night, I finally got curious. Real curious. I waited till the place cleared out around 2 a.m. and walked over to it. The hum grew louder the closer I got, like it was aware of me. My skin prickled. I reached into my wallet and pulled out $1. Held it there for a long time, just staring at that greasy slot. Then I fed it in. It took the bill. No hesitation. And then it gave me something. Not candy. It dropped a black coin, slightly warm to the touch, like it had been sitting in a pocket. No faces, no markings, except the words. You shouldn't have stared at it, heart thudding. And then the lights in the building dimmed just for a second, long enough for the monitor screens to flicker. When they came back on, I saw myself on every screen, but I wasn't alone. Behind me, in the grainy footage, something tall was standing next to the vending machine. No face, no details, just long, thin limbs bending slightly like it was listening. I spun around. Nothing there. Just the machine, humming louder now. I've been trying to shake it all day, but that coin, it won't leave me. I threw it away, found it in my pocket, burned it, woke up with it on my chest, and I keep seeing things. Not always directly, just in reflections or in the corners of monitors, shapes, watching me. I called my cousin Works. Over in San Ignacio, good with weird stuff. Told him about it. He said something about waking it up, said some machines aren't machines at all, that in the old days people used to think spirits lived in certain objects, mirrors, boxes, even engines. He called it a nested presence. Said it might be feeding. The weirdest part? I started noticing coins left behind in odd places. At home, under my pillow, in my car. One fell out of my thermos. Always the same message. He knows. This morning, I got to work early. Place was locked up tight, just like I left it. But the vending machine had changed. Something had scratched the word stop into the plastic above the keypad. Deep gouges, like from fingernails. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. The machine watches. It waits. Last night, a girl went missing. 13 years old. She waited for the late bus with her mother, got up to get a snack, and never came back. Security footage glitched out. Last frame showed her standing in front of the machine, dollar in hand. They never found her. Her mother said she heard whispering. Said the vending machine smiled. I don't know how much longer I can take this. The machine doesn't like me, and I think tonight it's going to do something about it. It was always the same routine every Wednesday night at exactly midnight. The gas station off Highway 64, just outside of Tyler, Texas, half hidden behind a grove of dry mesquites, never saw much traffic at that hour. Most nights it was just diesel rigs rumbling through and the occasional drunk college kid stumbling in for smokes or jerky. But the guy in the preacher's collar, he was different. Clean-cut, late 50s, weathered but sharp. Carried a King James Bible tucked neatly under one arm and wore black slacks with polished shoes, like he was on his way to a funeral or coming back from one. Didn't buy anything. Didn't speak unless spoken to. Just came in, nodded once, and went straight for the payphone at the end of the store, beside the old lotto machine that hadn't worked since '98. He always brought a quarter. Always spoke for exactly 3 minutes. Then he hung up, whispered a short prayer under his breath, something Latin, maybe, and walked out into the dark where a beat-up brown Buick waited with the engine running. You could hear the low idle of it as he pulled away, disappearing down the highway without headlights. First few times I saw him, I figured he was just a lonely old man, maybe calling a widow, some shut-in across the state, or maybe he was just plain crazy. This was East Texas. After all, crazier folks have roamed gas stations at night. I was 17 when I first took the graveyard shift at Martin's Fuel and Mart, just working to save up for a car and get out of town. I didn't think much of the preacher until one night when curiosity got the better of me. That night, he came in like always, nodded, walked to the payphone, dropped in the quarter. I don't know what possessed me, but I crept over behind the coffee station, crouched real low and listened. Not close enough to see his face, just within earshot. At first, it was silence. Then the preacher said one word, "Hello." And then screaming. It was sharp human, almost definitely a woman, though it was hard to tell. But it wasn't just her. There was something else layered under the scream, like the sound of something being torn apart slowly, but never breaking. Like meat stretched too far. Wet and dry all at once. And there was laughing too. Not human, not even animal. It sounded like it came from inside the phone itself, like it was chewing through the line. The preacher didn't say a word after hello. He just stood there, head bowed, listening like he was in confession, like he was being punished. Then, almost. Exactly 3 minutes later, the line went dead. He hung up, whispered his Latin prayer, and left. I didn't sleep that morning. I called in sick the next night. When I came back the following Wednesday, I told myself I was just imagining things. Maybe it was interference, static, a messed up signal. But when midnight came around, he was there. I didn't hide this time. I just watched him from behind the counter. Same ritual. Same timing. Same expression, like grief carved deep into stone. He looked so tired. I started asking around. Old-timers mostly. The kind who drank coffee with 2 inches of sugar and remembered when Tyler had one stoplight. Most of them had never heard of a preacher matching that description. One guy, Walter Crenshaw, said he thought he might have seen someone like that 20 years ago. Back when there was still a church out on Dewberry Road. Burned down in '98, he said, scratching his temple. Preacher was never found. Think his name was Lanton or Langford, something with an L. So I did some digging. Turns out there was a Reverend Langford. William J. Langford ran a small Pentecostal church out in the Pines. Congregation of about 25, most were family. One Sunday morning, all 25 vanished. Doors were locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. No blood. Just the preacher's collar left neatly folded on the altar. Langford's. Buick was gone. So was he. The case never went anywhere. The county buried it. Small town horror doesn't play well on the news. Now here's the part that still keeps me up. One night, the preacher didn't hang up after 3 minutes. He kept talking, muttering. Not in Latin this time, English. He was begging. I heard it as I stalked the beef jerky rack near the soda fridge. He was pleading over and over. Please, not again. Don't make me do it again. And then came the sound of crunching, like something hard being bitten clean through. The scream came after that. Not the same one, deeper, male. And then another voice, one that didn't belong on this earth. It sounded like it was coming through him, through his body, like an old speaker playing something too loud. Debt must be paid. That's what it said, over and over. Debt must be paid. Debt must be paid. The phone burst into sparks. I ran out from behind the counter, but he was already walking away, calm, like nothing happened. I stood there, staring at the smoking receiver. The cord was half melted. The booth smelled like sulfur and rot. That was the last time I saw him. The next week came. No preacher. No Buick. But the payphone still rang at midnight. I didn't answer. The first night, or the second. But on the third Wednesday, I picked it up, and I swear to God, it was my mother on the other end. That only thing is she died when I was 10. Tyler, she said, voice cracked and raw. Don't listen. Don't let it in. And then she screamed. The line cut. I threw the phone down and backed away. The booth hasn't stopped ringing since midnight, every Wednesday. I quit the job a month later, moved in with my cousin in Houston. I figured if I put some distance between me and that goddamn place, maybe the nightmares would stop. But they IDM single quotes T.3 nights ago, I walked past a payphone in Montrose. It rang. Midnight. No one else even seemed to notice. I didn't answer, but I could hear what was coming out. Screaming. And something else. It started in the dead drag of August, when the heat in the Cogdaches clung to your skin like a damp sheet, and even the cicadas sounded like they were begging for mercy. The old Gulf Tech station sat off Highway 59, just far enough from town to feel forgotten, with only a sagging billboard and a sun-bleached Pepsi machine marking its presence. It wasn't much, 2 pumps, a chipped awning, and a flickering LED sign that hadn't shown the right gas prices since the Obama years. Locals came by out of habit, not necessity. Tourists missed it entirely. Rodney Harlan worked the night shift alone, like he had for the past 5 years. Ever since his divorce and the DUI that lost him his job at the paper mill. He wasn't a bad guy, just one of those men time forgot. The kind you see behind every counter in East Texas, eyes permanently glazed from too many hours and not enough sleep. Every night from 10 to 6, he sat behind the bulletproof glass at the register, sipping black coffee from a warped thermos and listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights above. The ice locker stood just outside the door, tucked between the red box machine nobody used and a bent trash can with a wasp nest inside it. It was the older kind hinged door, metal handle, faded bags of ice $2.50, sticker barely clinging to the surface. The kind that groaned when you opened it and hissed like something angry when you shut it again. Rodney didn't think about it much, except when the delivery guy came by on Wednesdays to refill it. Bags stacked like bodies in there, each one frostbitten and hard as concrete. The first time someone mentioned the whispers, it was a couple in their 20s, stoned out of their minds, giggling and trying to buy Swisher Sweets and gummy worms. Rodney had already rung them up when the girl tilted her head toward the door. "Hey, is that ice machine haunted or something?" Rodney blinked. "What?" She nudged the guy beside her. "Tell him. You heard it too." "I mean, yeah," the guy mumbled, rubbing his neck. "I thought I heard somebody in there, like, whispering." "Whispering?" Rodney repeated, raising an eyebrow. The girl nodded. "Like real faint, let me out, that's what it sounded like." "Super creepy." Rodney laughed, more out of habit than amusement. "Probably just the condenser fan acting up. That thing's older than me." They left still giggling, and Rodney didn't think about it again until 2 nights later when an older man in a camo hat came in for a Monster and a can of Dip. He dropped the money on the counter and jerked a thumb toward the locker. "You? Got somebody messing around in there?" Rodney looked up from the till. "What do you mean?" "I swore I heard something. Like a voice. Thought maybe some kid got in there as a joke." Rodney frowned. "You're the second person this week said that." The man grunted. "Well, you better check it. Ain't safe if there's someone screwing around." So Rodney did. He took the big ring of keys from under the counter, shuffled out into the sticky night air, and unlocked the ice locker. When he opened it, his glasses fogged up instantly, the cold blasting him in the face. He peered inside. Nothing but neat rows of bags, their plastic fogged white with frost. He listened. Nothing, just the quiet rattle of the machinery, the hum of something ancient and mechanical doing its job. He told himself it was heat stroke or the echoes of the highway. Maybe kids playing pranks or the weird acoustics of the parking lot. He didn't hear anything himself. Not that night. But then it kept happening. Once a week, then twice. Sometimes a whole day would go by without incident, and then suddenly, 3 different customers in one shift would mention it. Whispers, breathing, sometimes just a cold, human-sounding sigh. One man claimed he'd seen movement fingers pressing against the interior of the glass from the inside, like the plastic had become translucent for a moment. Rodney didn't want to believe any of it. He chalked it up to power of suggestion. A local legend in the making. Nakagdachu's had a long memory and a wild imagination. The town itself was old enough to have ghosts, and plenty of them. Civil War stories. Witch tales. That thing they used to say about the old hospital that burned down. People around here loved their hauntings. But then came the night he saw the handout. It was just after 3. The lull where the world feels like it's forgotten how to move. He'd gone outside to smoke something he only did when the silence got too thick, and as he turned to toss the butt into the trash, his eyes landed on the locker, and there it was, pressed against the inside of the frosted window. A pale hand, fingers splayed. They looked real, not like a sticker or a shape in the ice. He could see the lines in the skin, the suggestion of fingernails. The palm was grayish, tinged with blue, dead-looking. He stared at it for what felt like forever, the smoke dying in his lungs. Then he dropped the cigarette and rushed over, wrenching the locker open. Nothing. Just bags of ice, quiet and lifeless, stacked like always. The cold hit him so hard he gasped. He reached in, pulling bags aside, feeling the crunch of ice. Through the plastic, no hand, no body. Just that numb, empty cold. He didn't sleep the next day. Couldn't. The image of that hand stayed behind his eyelids every time he closed them. He told himself he was overtired. Maybe he'd nodded off standing up. Maybe it was a trick of the light. But deep down, a part of him, the part that remembered. His grandma's ghost stories, the one that used to swear he saw things in the dark as a kid knew better. The next night, he brought a flashlight and a thermos of coffee so strong it made his stomach hurt. He sat behind the counter watching the ice locker through the glass door, barely blinking. Just after 2:30, the power flickered. Not enough to kill the lights, just a hiccup in the grid. But when it happened, the security cameras fuzzed for about 10 seconds, and all the coolers behind him made a sound like they were groaning. Then the whispering started. Rodney didn't hear it with his ears exactly. It was more like something pressing against his skull, soft and desperate, like breath on the inside of a coffin. Let me out. He stood slowly, opened the door. The air outside was dead still, humid like soup. He walked to the locker. The hand was there again. Same shape, same fingers. But this time, they moved. Not much. Just a twitch. The middle finger curling slightly. As if beckoning, he almost ran. Almost turned and bolted right then. But something kept him in place. Curiosity, maybe. Or that stubborn part of every East Texas man that won't let you back down, even from ghosts. He unlocked the door again. Heart THUDDING. And this time, when he opened it, there was a smell. It didn't belong to the cold. It was sweet and rotten. Like meat gone bad. Not strong, but there. He leaned in, shining the flashlight across the rows of bags. There, half buried between 2 stacks, with something not wrapped in plastic. He reached in with trembling hands and pulled it forward. It was a bag. No, not a bag. A bundle, wrapped in what looked like old canvas. The material was stained and stiff with ice. He tugged it out, laying it on the concrete. Unwrapping it felt like a crime. Inside were bones. Human bones, small, child-sized. The police took everything. Cordoned off the station for 3 days, pulled the ice locker apart piece by piece. They found more bones, dozens of them, some old, brittle, some fresher, all wrapped the same way. The delivery guy who'd been restocking the ice, Vanished. No trace of him. The company he worked for claimed he hadn't been employed in over a year. Rodney quit the job, moved out of Nacogdoches entirely. Last anyone heard, he was living in a halfway house in Tyler, drinking again. The Gulf Tech station reopened under new management. They replaced the ice locker, poured fresh concrete, but every once in a while, someone still claims to hear the whispers. Unleaded 66, it was the kind of road that never showed up right on GPS. You could enter it, sure. Type in Old Highway outside Abilene and you'd get a jagged little gray line, like a half-forgotten scar across West Texas. But the moment you turned onto it, the screen blinked and recentered, your little blue dot spinning helplessly in place. No signal. No directions. And suddenly the air just felt heavier. Hank Collier had driven that stretch twice a week for 3 years. An oil field contractor, hard man. Mid-50s, lean and sun-split, with knuckles like bricks and a temperament to match. That night, mid-July, he was coming back from Odessa, midnight, the AC coughing and rattling like it had something lodged in its throat. He hadn't meant to take Old Highway not with the new bypass open, but traffic on 20 was jammed with some rollover. Near Sweetwater. The troopers were funneling drivers onto the detour, and the detour curled east and spat him out onto that gray ghost of a road. Worn down and two-lane thin. It was hot, and that way Texas gets after midnight in the summer, where the asphalt breathes. And the wind smells like old rubber and lightning bugs move in tight, slow arcs. He drove past fields gone black with distance, mesquite and cactus sprawling like tombstones in every direction. He passed no other cars, not for a long time. Then he saw the glow. At first, it was just a shimmer, like swamp gas or heat lightning. A flicker on the horizon, low and green, way too green. As he got closer, he thought maybe it was an old diner. Sign or one of those long-abandoned tourist traps still wired up for God knows what reason. But it wasn't that. It was a gas station. He slowed. The sign said unleaded 66, no cent symbol. Just the numbers, flat and proud. The letters. Beneath it spelled Gardener's Fuel in washed-out paint. The building itself looked like it hadn't been touched since Carter was in office. Cinder block walls, a flat tin roof, flickering neon tubes framing the windows like insect legs. The canopy over the pumps glowed sickly green. The color of brackish. Pond water, no motion. No sound. He would have kept going, he should have, but the needle on his tank was kissing empty. The fuel light had been on since Midland. He hadn't noticed. Distracted. Old brain tricks. He swore he'd filled it that morning. Hell with it, he muttered and pulled in. There was no sign of life inside. The cashier's booth was dark, with a dusty window and a black rotary phone on the counter. The pumps looked old as hell. Numbers clicked mechanically under yellowed plastic windows. There was a credit card slot, but no chip reader. No touch screen. Just a faded sticker that said insert and WAIT in crooked bubble letters. He got out of the truck. The moment his boots hit the concrete, he felt it. The air didn't move right. It didn't smell right either. No diesel, no grease, no scorched. Ozone from the high wires. Just silence. Thick, pressing silence. His hand trembled as he reached for the pump, but he chalked that up to nerves. Long night. Bad road. He inserted his card. The pump clicked. He filled up 20 gallons, 66 cents a gallon. The total was $13.20. The numbers locked in place like a slot machine that just won something it didn't want to. He didn't remember getting back in the truck. When he opened his eyes, the sun was rising. His hands were on the wheel. The truck was parked on the shoulder of County Road 212, 30 miles northeast of where he'd stopped. No memory of the drive. The tank read full. The engine was off. A single printed receipt sat in his cup holder. Thanks for the soul. Come again. He never told anyone, but he wasn't the only one. It started with long haulers. A flatbed driver named Shep Ransom woke up 3 counties away with blood on his steering wheel and the name Gardner scratched into his palm with something jagged. A couple from Amarillo swore they pulled in just to check the map. Never. Bought a thing, but the woman lost 3 teeth sometime between 2 o'clock and 2:45 a.m. with no trauma. No explanation. A hitchhiker named Cal Murray made a Reddit post about the place in 21. Said he passed out halfway through a Lucky Strike and woke up 41 miles east, covered in highway dust, with a receipt stapled to his collarbone. Police chalked it up to heat stroke or meth or overactive imaginations. But it wasn't the kind of thing that let go. Once people heard, they looked for it. The thing was, you couldn't find it unless your tank was nearly empty. It was like the place knew. You had to need it. And if you needed it, it took something. The receipts never changed. Always the same. Thanks for the soul. Come again. Some were thermal paper. Some were the kind you tear from a carbon pad. One guy got a strip of butcher paper with the message burned into it. A soldier from Dias AFB tried to go back, wanted to prove it was some prank. Even brought a buddy and a GoPro. They got lost 2 minutes off the main road. GPS glitched. Batteries drained. When they came out the other end 6 hours later, one of them was missing 2 weeks of memory, and the other kept drawing spirals on the inside of his arm until he bled out in his bathtub 6 days later. But the worst story, the one that made me quit driving nights, came from this ex-pastor named Clyde Hurl. He came into the diner where I was working graveyard shifts back in 19. Tall man, reedy voice, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Said he'd spent the last 12 years trying to undo what he did that night. And the worst part, he said, wasn't the station itself. It was what came back with him. He said it followed him. Said it sat in the back seat for 40 miles, whispering about clocks and harvest and the oil under the skin. His wife left him the next month. His kids wouldn't come near him. Not after he started sleepwalking and whispering in Latin. He never learned Latin. Said he tore every mirror out of his house because something kept looking at him from behind the glass. He tried burning the receipt. Tried mailing it to random addresses. Tried burying it at a crossroads like old folklore said. Didn't matter. Because once you got gas from Gardner's, something got you. Maybe it really was a soul. Maybe something older, hungrier. He called it the thing in the green light. Said it smelled like burning copper and wet feathers. He saw it in his dreams. Said it had a face like a melted pump handle and teeth that clicked like a typewriter. I didn't want to believe him, but the man cried without blinking. Eyes red as if he'd been staring into the sun for a week. He vanished 3 days later. They found his truck parked just outside Old Highway. Engine cold. Driver's door open. A puddle of thick black fluid under the chassis. Not oil, not transmission fluid. Something else. His boots were left behind. Inside them, 2 perfectly clean, white femurs. Nothing else. That was 6 years ago, and the station? Still there, still glowing, still 66 cents a gallon. The gas station sat on the edge of a long, flat stretch of Highway 377, the kind of place you only noticed when you needed gas or cigarettes at 2 in the morning. It was one of those tired, flickering outposts of convenience tucked into the dusty outskirts of Fort Worth, just far enough from the city that you couldn't see the skyline but close enough to pretend it still mattered. The kind of place forgotten by time and watched by things that remembered it. Tanner Mays had worked the night shift there for 3 years. 32 years old, no wife, no kids, and nothing waiting for him back at his studio apartment except a creaky ceiling fan, and an old cat named Lucifer. He liked the solitude of the late shift. The way the hum of the coolers filled the empty space after midnight, the click of the fluorescent lights overhead, the quiet rustle of the occasional moth battering against the glass. He liked that no one bothered him, the worst he ever had to deal with were drunks fumbling for their wallets or truckers in from Oklahoma who smelled like diesel and cheap beef jerky. Mostly, it was just silence and sameness, night after night, until at WSN single quotes to dot it started with something small as these. Things always do. A trick of the eye. One night, he was closing up just past 2 m. The station technically ran 24 hours. But corporate cut the graveyard shift to save money, so now the pumps ran unattended and the store shut down for 4 hours. Tanner had just flipped the light switches behind the counter when he noticed the shadows didn't move quite right. The lights overhead buzzed off in sequence left to right. As always, but as each row darkened, the shadows didn't stretch and lengthen like they should. Instead, they stayed in place, rooted, unmoving. One shadow by the back aisle, near the expired canned goods, didn't flicker or fade at all. It was a long, thin line on the floor, like a man standing stiff with his arms at his sides. Tanner stood still behind the counter for a long moment, staring at that spot. The air had gone cold, like someone had opened the freezer door. Eventually, he shook his head, told himself it was fatigue, and locked up for the night. The next night, the same thing happened. The lights went out. The shadows stayed where they were. The third night, it was worse. He turned the lights off at 2:03 a.m. He always waited until after 2, just in case a last-minute customer came in. He flipped the switches, waited for the buzz, and stared out over the store. The shadows didn't just stay in place. They moved, not in a dramatic cinematic way. Nothing that obvious. They shifted slightly against the geometry of the store. Angles that didn't make sense. Lines where there should have been curves. One long shadow dragged just half an inch across the floor, then stopped. Like it had noticed him watching. Tanner backed toward the door, key in his hand, a sick twist rising in his gut. He didn't lock up that night. Just walked out and got in his car, hands shaking, engine stuttering as he drove home in silence. He told himself it was stress. He told himself it was insomnia, too much caffeine, too little sleep. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. The next night, he left the lights on. He stayed behind the counter, kept the radio low, and tried to read an old paperback. At 2:14 a.m., the lights flickered. He looked up just in time to see every light in the store shut off. Not with the switch, but like someone had cut the power. Pitch black swallowed the store. The radio went dead. Tanner froze in the silence. Something whispered from behind the chip rack. "You're not in charge anymore." He didn't scream. He couldn't. His throat locked, lungs empty. He just stood there as something heavy shuffled behind the aisles. Slow, dragging steps, like bare feet on old tile. He turned to run, but the door wouldn't budge. Locked tight. Though he never locked it, he turned back toward the store. Nothing but darkness. But he could hear it moving, circling, closer now. Something large, wet-breathing, with a weight behind it that felt wrong. Like gravity pulled different wherever it stepped. He didn't sleep that day. Didn't go in that night. He called in sick. And the manager didn't argue. No one ever did. It was the kind of job that ran on silence and turnover. You disappeared. Someone else filled in. He stayed in his apartment all night, windows shut, lights on. But when he went into the bathroom around 2 a.m., he found a shadow on the shower curtain. A tall, thin outline, arms straight down at its sides. He hadn't turned the light on yet. The shadow shouldn't have been there. He didn't go back to work. Quit by text. No one replied. Weeks passed. The gas station stayed open. He drove by once. late at night, just to see if it was still there. The lights were on, but there were no cars, no customers, no movement. And no matter how long he watched, the shadows inside never shifted. They just stood there, silent, waiting. Then things started to show up in his apartment. Not objects, just signs. Shadows where they didn't belong. In the corner of his eye, on the ceiling at night, under the couch, even when all the windows were closed. Once he came home and found every light in the place turned off, even though he left them on when he left. Written on his mirror in what looked like condensation were the words, "You still think you left?" He began seeing things during the day, faces in windows, long limbs in alleyways, a figure in the back of the bus, never blinking, never looking away. He moved to a new apartment. Didn't matter. They followed. Eventually, he realized something. He hadn't quit the station. He just stopped being the clerk. Someone else had taken the role. Whatever they were, they had claimed the building and everything that touched it. The moment the lights turned off and the shadows didn't move, Tanner stopped being an employee. He became part of the station's story. Something trapped between pages that no one else was reading. Now, the lights in his new place flicker every night at 2:03. The radio cuts off. The shadows stay still, and somewhere in the dark, a whisper says, "You're not in charge anymore." He doesn't sleep. He doesn't eat much. He doesn't leave the lights off, but he knows it's only a matter of time. One night, he'll blink. Just once, and the shadows will move again. It started with a rumor passed between cashiers on the late shift. Beaumont was the kind of Texas town where things never changed unless they decayed. The Walmart out on Highway 105 was a 24-hour hub for truckers, insomniacs, night shift, nurses, and the occasional meathead twitching through the fluorescent maze. You saw some weird shit after midnight, but even the weird had patterns. This was different. Aisle 3 was the chips and snack cakes aisle, sandwiched between soda on one side and cereal on the other. Around 2:30 a.m., nearly every night, she'd show up. Young woman, maybe 20 at most, in a soaked powder blue prom dress clinging to her skin like it was her own. Hair stringy and wet, dripping puddles onto the floor. She never slipped. She never made a sound except for the humming, a slow, sing-song lullaby like something you'd hear in a cradle rather than a grocery store. Randy, a grizzled overnight stalker with a bum knee and 10 years of unflinching boredom, was the first one to say something. "She's not real," he told Carla, the new hire. She's stuck, like a broken part of a VHS tape playing over and over. Carla had laughed. "You trying to haze me, Randy? That a local thing?" But a week later, she stopped laughing. She'd seen the girl herself, turned into aisle 3, to restock the Little Debbies, and there she was, barefoot, dripping, her eyes following the rows of snacks without focusing on any. Carla swore the air was colder when she passed by, that her skin prickled like she'd walked through a spiderweb. The girl didn't look up, didn't acknowledge her, just moved down the aisle, slowly, humming. When Carla turned back, maybe 3 seconds later, she was gone. The night manager, Alvin, checked the security footage. And yeah, there she was, time-stamped and real. Not just a glitch in someone's half-asleep mind. But when he played it back, something stuck in his throat. About 3 nights prior, as the girl passed the middle of the aisle, she stopped and turned to face the camera. It wasn't a slow, natural glance. It was instant. One frame, she was facing forward. The next, eyes locked on the lens. Her lips moved silently. Alvin turned up the audio feed, but all it picked up was a low hiss from the store's speakers. Still, he leaned in. She mouthed 3 words. "Still drowning." That might have been brushed off as creepy coincidence. A messed up prank maybe. Except the dress, always that same soaked prom gown, left real puddles on the floor. Randy once followed the trail after she vanished and swore it ended right in front of the stockroom door. The wet footprints didn't fade like normal water would. They just stopped mid-step. After that, no one went into aisle 3 alone. People rearranged restock schedules, pretended they forgot inventory checklists. Alvin put in a request to corporate for a maintenance review of the HVAC system, claiming persistent moisture buildup in a dry climate. The guy from corporate came, stood in the aisle for all of 10 minutes, and left pale as drywall. Nobody ever saw him again. One night around mid-August, I was working Register 8. Used to be a teacher in Port Arthur before budget cuts and a bitter divorce shoved me into a job where I scanned rotisserie chickens and Nicorette gum for lonely grandmothers. I'd heard the stories, dismissed most of them. We all meet our ghosts, especially in a dead-end town like Beaumont. But that night, I was asked to cover the overnight shift when Carla called out sick. Said her skin itched every time she closed. Her eyes dot it was just past 2:30 when I decided to see for myself. The store was quiet. You could hear the compressor hum in the refrigerated aisle. Aisle 3 stretched out ahead like an empty corridor in a hospital wing. Too clean. Too quiet. I walked slowly, trying not to look like I was bracing for something. My hands felt clammy. I didn't believe, not really, but the air felt wrong, heavier, like standing at the edge of a lake at night, not knowing what was under the water dot. She appeared halfway down, like she'd been waiting. Prom dress plastered to her frame. Sopping wet, bare arms hanging limp. Her hair clung to her cheeks in thick strands. She was humming, slow, breathy, almost tender, but the melody was off, like someone remembering a tune from long ago and getting the notes just a little wrong. She didn't see me at first. I stood behind the candy rack, heart hammering. Her eyes scanned the rows of Fritos and pork rinds, like she was searching for something she couldn't name. And then, just like the footage, she stopped. Her head snapped toward me. Not turned. Snapped. Like a twitch, a spasm. Our eyes locked. And I swear to God, they were wrong. Not glowing, not monster eyes. Just dead. Murky. Flat as river mud. Her lips moved, and even though I couldn't hear a sound, I read the words clear as day still. Drowning. I took a step back, knocked over a display of Pringles, and when I looked up again, she was gone. No splash of footsteps. No sound. Just the faint echo of her lullaby already fading. I told Alvin. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded and poured himself another cup of stale breakroom coffee. We used to think it was a prank. Maybe some kid pulling a TikTok thing, he said. Then one night I stayed late. Saw her walk right through a locked door. We dug around. Local forums, old newspaper clippings, nothing recent. But Randy remembered something. Said there'd been a car accident in the early 2000s out near Old Sour Lake Road. Some kids on their way back from prom. The driver, drunk, swerved into a bayou. 2 got out, 1 didn't. A girl named Emily Courtright. Wore a blue dress. Never found her body. They drained part of the swamp a month later. Found beer cans, a shredded tire, a scrap of silk. No sign of her. Official story was that the Gators probably got her, but people said weird things. That her mother kept setting a place for her at dinner. That her bedroom light kept turning on by itself. That, on prom anniversaries, someone saw her walking along the edge of the water, dress still dripping, lips moving like she was singing. No idea how she ended up in aisle 3. We don't talk about it anymore. Walmart gave the staff a vague corporate warning about spreading unfounded rumors after a blogger came through and wrote a piece titled The Walmart Witch of Beaumont. The video they uploaded, security footage of her turning to the camera, Went viral for about 3 hours before it was pulled. Not by YouTube, but by the uploader. Account deleted. No trace left. We still see her. Sometimes a customer will come to the register, pale and wide-eyed. You guys have someone doing a haunted house thing in the chips aisle? We just smile, say it's part of the seasonal promo. Offer them 10% off Halloween candy even if it's April. But me, I watch the cameras. Every night. Same time. She's always there. Always humming. Always wet. I've started trying to hum the tune back to her. Maybe it'll mean something. Maybe it'll help. Last night, she looked at me again. But this time, she didn't mouth the same words. This time she said, "Come with me," and for one flickering second, the feed glitched, just a single frame, and I saw something behind her. Not the snack aisle, not the store.water.dark, black water stretching in every direction, full of movement just below the surface. Her dress floated around her like seaweed. And behind her, far off, shapes moved, something big. Something slow. When the camera righted itself, she was gone again. I don't know how much longer I'll keep working here. But something tells me it doesn't matter. I dream about water now, about cold hands pulling me down. I wake up with my sheets wet, not sweat, wet, like I've been walking in the rain. And it hasn't rained in Beaumont in 6 months. She's always in aisle 3, and I think soon I will be too. It was close to midnight in San Angelo, Texas, the kind of dry, breathless night where even the streetlights seemed to sweat. The fluorescent hum inside the fuel zone off US 87 was louder than usual, or maybe it just seemed that way to Cal, the overnight clerk who'd been working the graveyard shift 3 nights a week for the last 9 months. He had the place to himself again. The soft whir of the cooler fans, the buzzing Coke machine by the door, and the occasional click of the automatic icebox outside were the only sounds besides the tick of the second hand on the old wall clock, and the mirror, the convex security mirror bolted into the ceiling above the register, had always been slightly off. Most of the time, Cal didn't think about it. You learned to tune things out when you worked alone at night. But lately, he'd noticed something that gnawed at him. The mirror didn't show you in real time. Not quite. It lagged. Just by a second. Maybe less. If he raised his arm, it would lift in the mirror a breath later. If he nodded, smiled, or scratched his neck, the reflection would mimic it just after. He thought at first it might be a trick of the lighting or maybe a delay in the feed. Except there was no feed. No cameras. The mirror wasn't electronic. It was just a standard dome-shaped convex security mirror mounted to give a wide-angle view of the aisles behind the counter. Nothing fancy. No reason for it to show anything other than what was there when it was there. He brought it up once to Jimmy, the daytime manager, but the guy just snorted and told him to stop huffing the window cleaner. It's just a mirror, Cal. Maybe you're the one lagging. Real funny, that was 2 weeks ago. Since then, Cal had started watching it more closely during the slow hours between rushes, the time after 10 p.m. when nobody but drifters, gas-thirsty truckers, and local burnouts came through. He started playing with it, moving slowly, deliberately, seeing just how long the delay was. 1 second. Always 1 second. Consistent, dependable even, like a broken watch that still kept the wrong time flawlessly. Then on Tuesday, it changed. It was 11:48 p.m. when he looked up and saw himself smiling. In the mirror, his reflection tilted its head just slightly and pulled its lips into a grin. Not a big one, just enough to show some teeth. The kind of grin you gave when you were about to tell someone a secret or when you were lying to them. Only he wasn't smiling. His own face was still, blank, confused. He froze, watched the mirror, waited for the delay to catch up. But it didn't. His reflection just kept smiling. No second delay, no mirroring of his shock. Just that same smile, calm and slightly crooked. Then it blinked, not a normal blink. The mirror Cal blinked out of sync, eyes closing while his own stayed open. Cal slowly lifted his hand to scratch his chin, and this time the mirror didn't follow. It kept smiling. He stepped back, heart thudding like a fist on drywall. He stared up at it, jaw tightening. He looked around, trying to find something that made sense. Maybe a prank, a projector, a weird trick of the glass. But there was no explanation. The mirror had never done that before. When the bell above the front door jingled behind him, he jumped so hard he knocked over a pack of gum. A tall man in a dusty white cowboy hat walked in. He smelled like engine oil and desert air. With a face like a cracked road map and eyes that didn't match one green, one clouded over with a milky film. Cal tried to act normal, rang him up for a pack of Red Man and 2 bottles of Gatorade. But he couldn't stop glancing at the mirror. The reflection was back to normal now. The man looked up at it once, his lips twitching like he was about to say something. But then he paid in cash and walked out without another word. Cal didn't sleep that morning when he got home. He tried, but the image stuck with him. The version of himself that smiled when he didn't. The next night, he almost called in sick. But he needed the money. Wednesday. The mirror didn't act up until almost 2 in the morning. He was restocking the cigarettes when he caught something out of the corner of his eye, a flicker, like movement when there shouldn't have been any. He turned and looked at the mirror. There he was, back at the register, just standing there, watching himself, but in real life, he was 2 feet to the left, facing the wall of Marlboros and Camels. The reflection was wrong, delayed, displaced. Whatever you wanted to call it, it wasn't showing him what was happening now. It was showing something else. He slowly walked back to the register, and the mirror version of him didn't move. It just stood there, grinning faintly, head tilted like a curious dog. He raised his right hand. The mirror didn't. He swallowed, felt something cold gather in his spine like water pooling at the base of a well. He reached up slowly, climbed the counter, and got close to the mirror, too close. Close enough to see the shimmer of dust on the glass, to see how the edges warped the world around them. His reflection finally moved. It leaned forward, closer, to the glass. Its mouth widened into a grin so large it creased up near the ears. Too wide, unnatural. And then it mouthed something. 3 syllables, "You'll see." Cal slipped, and nearly fell backward off the counter. He scrambled down, slammed his elbow into the corner of the lotto stand, and cursed. His breath came short and fast. When he dared to look up again, the reflection was normal. Just his own face, pale and tight-lipped. That night, he pulled the store ladder out from the stockroom and tried to take the mirror down. But it wouldn't budge. It wasn't screwed in. It was fused, as if it had been grown into the ceiling. The metal bolts were sealed over with some kind of hardened resin, smooth and gray and unnatural. Thursday. No customers came in after 10:30. That never happened. He stood behind the register, listening to the low hum of the cooler, the squeak of something small moving in the ceiling tiles. He kept his eyes away from the mirror, but his own eyes kept drifting back. At 12:16 a.m., he glanced up and saw something standing in the back aisle. In the mirror, it looked like a person, but it was too tall. Taller than the shelves. Its head brushed the ceiling. It was hunched forward with long arms that hung too low. It didn't move. It just stood there. Cal turned around fast. The aisle was empty. But in the mirror, it was still there. Slowly, the thing began to move. It walked or glided toward the front, step by step, closing the distance. Cal watched it, heart in his throat, hands trembling against the counter. It turned its head toward the mirror toward him and smiled. It had his face. The same jawline, the same chin, the same narrow scar beneath his left eye from when he'd taken a baseball to the cheek as a kid. But the eyes were wrong, darker, sunken, lips thinner. The smile stretched and grew as it approached, moving through the reflection only, never appearing in real space. When it reached the register, it looked down into the counter mirror and winked. Then the mirror cracked. Not all at once. Just a little hairline fracture that started from the corner and spidered outward like a dry riverbed in August. The sound was soft. A tick. The lights above Cal's head buzzed and flickered. One of them popped. He ran. Didn't grab his phone. Didn't lock up. Just got in his old Ford and drove straight through every red light between the store and his apartment off Sherwood Way. He didn't go back the next night. Jimmy called. Left a pissed-off voicemail about abandoning his shift. Said something weird was going on with the store's power. The damn mirror broke or something, he muttered. Place gives me the creeps lately. Cal didn't return the call. He never stepped inside the fuel zone again, but the mirror stayed. Cracked, but hanging. Even after Jimmy left. Even after the place closed down a month later when the new franchise owners came in and decided it wasn't worth the money. Locals say it's still there. If you break into the boarded-up store, if you shine a flashlight toward the register and look up, you can still see the mirror hanging crooked, covered in dust and spider webs. And sometimes people swear they see something else in it. A man standing behind the counter, smiling, always smiling, even when no one's there. He came in just before closing when the sky had turned that muddy red over Texarkana, like someone had dragged rust through the clouds. Wind pushed the air around in slow, swampy breaths. The kind of night that makes your skin feel tight and your nerves twitch under your shirt. I remember because the place was empty, dead quiet, and the neon open sign buzzed like a dying fly in the window. He wore a black suit, crisp, not wrinkled or dusty, like you'd expect out in this part of town. No tie, no hat, just the suit. And a white shirt buttoned up to the throat. Tall, maybe 6'3", long arms, skin pale like paper under the gas station fluorescence. But it wasn't his look that got me plenty of weirdos blow through Texarkana. It was his eyes, or the lack of them, not blind, not hollow, just he didn't blink. I don't mean he blinked less than normal. I mean he didn't do it at all. Not once, the whole time he stood there in front of me, just staring. Eyes wide still, like glass marbles locked in a wax sculpture. He didn't browse, didn't ask about gas or smokes or directions. He walked straight to the counter, silent as anything, and said, "Do you have any matches?" His voice wasn't gravelly or eerie, just quiet, even, like someone asking about the weather. I was tired. I'd worked a double. It was August, which means hellfire outside and stale AC inside. I didn't want to deal with strange. I just wanted him gone. "Yeah," I said, opening the drawer below the register. We had a box of free matchbooks we gave out sometimes when someone bought a lighter or a pack of smokes. I grabbed one and slid it across the counter. He didn't take it. "You gave these out recently?" he asked. That stopped me. "No," I said. "Not in a while." He looked at the matchbook, just stared at it. Then, slowly, reached down and picked it up with those long, cold fingers like he was touching a baby bird. Slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. Then he smiled. No teeth. Just the lips pulling back in a dry, thin arc. He turned and walked out without another word. The door jingled. I watched him through the glass as he walked off the lot, past the pumps, down the road. No car, no ride waiting. Just a man. In a suit walking into the darkness of Highway 67 like it was nothing. 7 days later, the station burned. I wasn't working that night. My buddy Lonnie he was on graveyard. Said it was just him and the bugs for hours, not a single customer since midnight. No electrical surges, no flickering, no smell of gas. Then the lights cut, power dead. Then darkness, he barely got out. Said the whole back room lit up in seconds, like someone poured gasoline across the shelves and threw a match from inside the walls. Fire marshal said it wasn't arson, no accelerants. Nothing flammable outside the normal stock. The weird part was what they found in the ashes. Not much, obviously. The back was just melted plastic and scorched concrete. But right where the register used to be, just where I'd handed him that matchbook, was a little black rectangle. Completely untouched. A matchbook. Not burned. Not even warm to the touch. They gave it to me after the investigation. Asked if I recognized it. I told them no. I lied, because when I picked it up, I saw what was on the inside flap. Not the logo or phone number of the station. That had all been scratched out like with a pin or nail. Instead, someone had written in looping ink, "You lit the spark. He brings the fire." I kept it in my junk drawer for a week. Couldn't sleep. Kept waking up to the smell of sulfur and smoke, but nothing burning. My apartment cold, windows sealed. But that smell kept coming. Then I had a dream. I was back at the station. But it wasn't burned down. It was exactly how it used to be, fluorescence flickering, radio crackling from the back. I was at the counter. The door opened. He came in again. Same suit. Same eyes. But this time, he didn't ask for matches. He said, "You passed it on." I tried to speak, but I couldn't. My throat locked up. He held out a hand, palm up. There was a flame floating above it, flickering with no source. Blue and white and whispering. Not loud, not hot. Just wrong. "You saw me," he said. "That is enough." I woke up sweating. Sheet soaked. Smell of smoke everywhere. The next day I called out of work. That was the last shift I ever skipped. Because that night, the next town over Nash, just 15 minutes up the highway, their gas station burned down. Same story. Night shift guy. Said a man in a suit came in, asked for matches, left without a word, no explanation. Fire started a week later. Same pattern. Same aftermath. Only this time, they found the matchbook on the clerk's dashboard. Car untouched. The book was open. Inside, the same message, but with a new line scribbled beneath it. "You're the wick." I didn't tell anyone. But I started. Tracking the fires, Hooks, Sims, New Boston, Maud, all in the path of Highway 67, and all burned within 6 to 8 days after someone matching his description came in asking for matches. Never a robbery, never a demand, just that question. And always the same result. There's a pattern. And there's a timeline. I saw him again last week. I was in my truck, parked off a rest stop near Red Lick, just stretching my legs. It was around dusk. A storm was rolling in, sky yellow and sick. I turned to head back, and there he was, standing by the vending machine near the bathroom wall. Didn't move. Just stared. I didn't stick around. Now every night I smell the smoke. Again, I hear crackling, like dry leaves catching fire. My dreams are full of ash and heat. I wake up coughing, eyes burning. But my house is fine, still standing. For now, the matchbook is gone. Disappeared from my drawer 2 nights ago. I didn't give it away, but I know who has it now. And if he asks you for matches, don't give them to him. Don't even speak. Just walk away, because if you do, if you so much as acknowledge him, your town's already burning. It always came in just before dawn, just when the dark sky over Kerrville started to melt into that dusty lavender haze that comes before real morning. No engine rumble. No headlights. The goddamn thing just appeared, crawling up the service road like it was born from the pavement. Locals called it the ghost freight. The first time I saw it, I thought I was still half dreaming, head heavy from too many beers and not enough sleep. Watching it roll past the gas station I managed out on State Highway 16, just north of Ware. The woods start to thicken. It was an 18-wheeler. Old style, like something from the 70s. The trailer was long and black, matte black, with no markings, no dot numbers, nothing. The cab was the same, but its windshield was pitch dark, like obsidian. Could have been a driver in there or no one at all. Never heard a thing. The truck glided past the pumps, didn't stop for gas, didn't swerve, didn't slow. I remember. The wind went dead still as it passed. Not a single chime from the flagpole, not a rustle in the trees. Felt like the whole damn world held its breath until the thing disappeared over the ridge. A week later, our station's outside camera's cheap-ass grainy security feed meant to scare off teens stealing jerky caught something else. Something. That made me quit drinking for a while. The truck came again, 4:47 a.m., right on the dot. Slid into the lot, stopped for exactly 1 minute, then left. Didn't buy gas, didn't unload anything. But when I rewound the footage to see if it left, a mark on the asphalt or something, I noticed the trailer had faces, hundreds of them. Faces pressed to the inside of the blacked out trailer windows, except the trailer wasn't supposed to have windows. You know those images you can't quite see unless you stare too long and start doubting yourself? That's what they were like. Faint shapes, the suggestion of mouths open and silent screens, eyes rolled back or locked wide. Some were children, some were elderly, and they weren't still. They shifted, like they were squirming under the surface, straining. No sound came through. The footage didn't record audio, but even in real time, standing 10 feet from it, there was nothing. No hum, no diesel clatter. Not even the usual crickets. I showed the tape to the other guys on shift. Manny, who used to haul freight before his heart gave out, just stood there with his mouth open. After a minute, he said, "That ain't a rig, that's a hearse." He quit 2 days later. Left a note on the register. It's not a truck. It's a cage. Over the next few months, I became obsessed. The truck came once a month, same date, same time. 4:47 a.m. on the dot. Sometimes it pulled into the lot. Sometimes it just passed by, but it always came. And every time, the footage showed more faces. I counted. First time, maybe 30. Then 72. Then 112. 1 month, I stopped counting at 200. They were piled on top of each other, pressed against the black glass or what looked like glass. At that point, I wasn't sure the thing obeyed any kind of material rules. One time I stood in front of it when it pulled in. I swear to God, I could see my breath in August, and I heard, not sounds exactly, more like pressure, like air being sucked out of the world. The sheriff wouldn't listen. Said I was pulling some social media prank, trying to go viral or whatever. But after I mailed him a copy of the footage on a DVD, I was trying anything. He came in himself, quiet, nervous, asked to see the original files. I showed him. He watched, didn't say a word. Left the station. Shot himself that weekend in his garage. The town pretended nothing happened. That's what Kerrville does, always has. It lets things settle into the soil, into the roots. We bury everything under barbecue joints and antique stores. But the truck kept coming. People started disappearing. A woman who sold pies at the farmer's market. A drifter who camped near the river. A pair of teenagers who went out to Enchanted Rock at night to mess around. And every time one vanished, the next visit from the truck showed more faces. I stopped sleeping. I started watching the road all night, drinking coffee until I was shaking. Once, I tried to follow it. That was the worst mistake I ever made. I had an old Dodge with a CB and good tires, so I figured, hell, if it's just a truck, it's gotta go somewhere. Somewhere on the map, it didn't. I followed it north on 16, through the canyon passes, over the twisted hills where the limestone cuts out like giant teeth. The thing never accelerated, never slowed, just glided. I kept my lights off, half out of fear I'd scare it off, half out of something deeper. Some sense that it knew I was there. 30 minutes out, I noticed the road behind me had disappeared. I mean, gone. I looked in my mirrors and all I saw was black. Not night black, void, like the tail end of the world was dissolving behind us. The trees vanished. The sky stopped twinkling. No stars, no moon, just the truck, the road, and me. Started hearing things in the cab, not voices. More like whispers behind my eyes. Flickers of memory that weren't mine. Screams in unfamiliar accents, a baby crying, glass breaking underwater. Then I saw my own face pressed up against the trailer's back window, staring back at me. I hit the brakes. The truck kept going. Spun around and floored it. I don't remember much after that. Just that eventually, I found myself parked in front of the gas station again as the sun was rising, tank still full. Trip meter on 0, like I'd never left. But when I checked, the date on my phone, 3 days had passed. After that, the dream started. People with hollow faces knocking on my window. A woman with no mouth asking for help through gestures. Screams in the static of the gas station's radio. At first I tried to talk to people about it, then I stopped. People don't want to hear about trucks full of screaming faces. They want cheap gas, cold beer, and a place to dump their ashtrays. But I think the truck's filling up. Last time it came, the windows, if that's what they are, were dense with faces, cheek to cheek, layered like some human collage. I think it's almost full, and when it is, I think it won't just keep driving. I think it'll unload, and I'll be first. It started with the kind of map you don't see anymore, the fold-up kind. Thumbtacked behind the counter of a dusty gas station just off Highway 90, on the western edge of Del Rio, Texas, a place most folks blew past without even glancing twice. The gas station had a name, sure, Carlos's Fuel and Mart, but everyone just called it the old station. And Carlos hadn't worked there in 20 years. The current clerk was a wiry woman named Nina who wore a worn blue cap and read Western. Paperbacks behind the counter, glancing up only when a car rolled in. She noticed the red dot first dot. It wasn't there when she opened that morning. She swore it. She'd unlocked the glass doors just past dawn, smelled the stale motor oil and sour gum wrappers, and gone behind the register like always. The map, a Texas highway map from 1998, sun faded to the color of pale denim, hung behind her like wallpaper. She'd seen it every day for the 5 years she worked there. Memorized it in a way. There was always a black dot for Del Rio, but that day a single red pin had appeared. Not a sticker, not a drawn circle. A literal pin, sharp-tipped, poking clean through the paper. It stuck out a 1/4 inch, blood red, like a wound on the map's dry skin. She thought it was a prank. Maybe the night guy, Darren, had done it. He was the only other employee, unless you counted the cleaning lady, who came once a week to mop the bathrooms and scowl at the rats in the snack aisle. But when she asked Darren about it that afternoon, he gave her a long look. "What pin?" He said. "The red one," she pointed. "Just past Lachlan, near the edge of nothing." "You didn't put that there?" He leaned around the register, squinting. Then his face shifted, his usual lazy confidence evaporated like gas fumes. "No," he said after a pause. "I didn't. That wasn't there last night." They stared at it. Something about the way the red looked against the paper made Nina uncomfortable. It wasn't bright, not candy-colored. It was darker, dried blood red. It looked like it didn't belong on the map or in this world, for that matter. That night, she had the dream that it began with silence. Not peaceful silence, but an oppressive kind, like someone had pressed a pillow over the world's mouth. No wind, no insects, not even the high keying of power lines. She stood in an open plain of dust and packed earth, stretching for miles. In every direction, flat and sterile like the floor of a drained lake. Overhead, nothing. No stars, no clouds, no moon. Just a dome of blank, colorless void. The air was warm but wrong, like it was made of breath exhaled by something dead. In the distance, she saw it. A gas station. Not Carlos's, but something older, squatter. Built low to the ground like it was trying to avoid being noticed. The pumps were rusted, skeletal. The sign had no letters. She walked toward it, though she didn't remember moving. Her legs didn't ache. Her feet didn't touch ground. But with each step, the pressure in her chest grew, as if something deep underground was watching her arrival. Inside, it was dark. There was no light, but she could still see. Shelves lined with items no one had bought in decades, rusted cans. Cigarette packs with brands she didn't recognize, glass bottles filled with dust instead of liquid. No sound, no clerk, but the register was there, and behind it another map, and on it another red pin. When she woke, her mouth was dry as chalk. The clock read 3:33 a.m. She didn't go to work that day or the next. But the dream came back, deepening each time. She walked further in the station, opened a door in the back she hadn't noticed before, found stairs leading down into dark soil that pulsed with a low mechanical throb like a heartbeat slowed to an inhuman rhythm. The silence never broke, not once. And always, when she turned to leave, she'd see the pin again red, sharp, embedded in the map like a buried nail dot by the fifth night. She called Darren. "You've had the dream," he said, before she said anything. "I see it when I close my eyes. I don't want to sleep anymore. I tried pulling the pin," he said, a week ago. "I thought it was just stuck in there. But when I touched it, Christ, Nina, it was warm. Like it had a pulse." She listened to him breathe heavily on the other end. "I still touched it," he went on. "Pulled it out, didn't mean to. Just yanked. And then," he trailed off. For a moment, she thought the call had dropped. "I'm not in Del Rio anymore," he said. "What?" "I don't know where I am." "I'm talking to you, yeah. I'm in a motel on 377, I think. But outside? It's not right." I opened the blinds and there was nothing. Just dirt. Just that same dirt from the dream. It's like it followed me, like the station followed me. I think it wants us to come back. The line went dead. Nina quit the next day. Left the keys on the counter, didn't even lock the door. But she didn't leave town. She meant to. Drove to the edge of Del Rio, but every highway out felt wrong. The roads flickered in the corner of her eye, like mirages. GPS stopped working. Signs pointed in circles. After a while, she ran out of gas, walked to a diner, called for a tow. And on the wall of that diner, behind the register, was another map of Texas. Same year. Same sun-bleached look, and the same red pin. That night, she didn't sleep. She tried. Drank until her vision swam. But every time she closed her eyes, she felt herself slipping, like being pulled backward through water. She'd see the map. She'd feel the pin in her hand, the weight of it wrong, like it was made of bone instead of plastic. She'd walk the dirt plains again, closer and closer to the back door of that nameless station. She stopped eating, stopped talking to people. And yet the dreams continued. Locals say she disappeared 2 weeks later. Her car was found near the Pecos River Bridge, keys in the ignition, Door open. No sign of a struggle, just dust. Her name's still on the schedule sheet at Carlos's Fuel and marked pinned up with a red thumbtack someone pointed out once. A joke maybe, but now the new. Clerk, a kid named Jesse, says he sees the pin move sometimes. Just a little, like it's adjusting itself 1 inch east, then back. He thought maybe the map was warping in the heat until last week when he touched the pin himself, just to straighten it. He hasn't shown up to work in 3 days, and last night, a woman filling up her truck said she saw something in the distance, out past the low hills north of town. A squat little building, low to the ground, under a sky so pale it looked a race dot it wasn't on any map. Except maybe one dot, and if you look close enough at that map, really close, you'll see the red dot. 2, but don't touch it. Not unless you're ready to walk where the sky doesn't reach. It was one of those dead-hot Texas afternoons in mid-August where the air inside the gas station felt like it had weight to it. The flickering hum of the overhead fluorescents buzzed out a headache, mixing with the distant crackling radio behind. The counter playing old country songs that nobody listened to anymore. Nothing ever really happened at the crossroads marked off Parker Road and Preston and Plano. It was the kind of place you only stopped at when you were running on fumes or had a craving for something processed and sugary. Martin, the clerk, was used to the quiet. Mid-shift on a weekday meant the rush had already come and gone, leaving him alone to kill time by rearranging packs of beef jerky or wiping down already clean counters. He was 36, divorced, and living in a one-bedroom apartment down on Custer Road with peeling linoleum floors and a leak in the ceiling that dripped when it rained. Life had narrowed into this tight little rhythm of monotony that was dull, sure, but safe. Predictable. Then the guy walked in, late 20s. Maybe, with a pale, twitchy look about him like a stray cat that had never quite learned to trust humans. He wasn't dirty or anything, just rattled, like his skin didn't quite fit. His eyes, too wide and scanning, kept twitching up toward the mirrored corners of the ceiling like he was tracking something no one else could see. He didn't speak, just walked right to the candy aisle, grabbed a pack of juicy fruit gum yellow as a warning sign and set it on the counter. 119, Martin said, barely looking up. The guy didn't respond. Just pulled a crisp 20 from his wallet and laid it down. Martin handed back the change, tapped a few buttons, and hit print on the register. The machine clattered to life with that familiar scratchy keek sound, but then kept going. He expected a few inches usual receipt, maybe with one of those $1 off gas with car wash coupons at the bottom. But the paper kept feeding out, a foot. Then 2. The customer didn't react, didn't even blink. He just stood there staring at the paper as it curled down past the register and onto the floor. Martin squinted and bent over to look at it. Names. That was the first weird part. It wasn't store info or itemized purchases, it was a list of names. Full names, hundreds of them, printed in a narrow mechanical font. No prices, no brands. Then came numbers. Latitude and longitude coordinates. Each name had a set next to it, along with a date. Some of the dates were years in the past, but others. August 17, 2025, August 29, 2025, September 1, 2025. All still to come. Martin's mouth went dry. What is this? He muttered. The receipt kept printing. 10 feet now. The guy didn't answer. He wasn't looking at the receipt anymore, he was looking at Martin. Just standing there with his head tilted slightly, like he was trying to memorize the lines of Martin's face. Then, after what felt like forever, the machine stopped. The final section of the receipt, 3 feet or more, was all blank. Then, at the very bottom, there was one more line. Martin Whitley. 33.0412N. 96.7392, August 30th, 2025. Processing. He felt the floor slide out from under him. Just for a second. That was the exact location of the Crossroads Mart. That was this place. And the date? 3 days from now. You think this is funny? He snapped, suddenly angry, flinging the paper across the counter. The man didn't move. His eyes looked
glassy now.
Something in him had checked out. I asked you a question. Martin stepped around the register, unsure if he was going to throw the guy out or call the cops or just get some kind of explanation, but the customer turned and walked straight out the door without another word. He climbed into a beat-up gray sedan and drove away. No license plate. Martin called his manager, then the police. Cops came, looked at the receipt, made some dumb jokes about pranksters and hacked registers. They took it, along with a copy of the surveillance tape, and said they'd file a report. That night, Martin couldn't sleep. He Googled some of the names and coordinates. Took a while. He had to dig through old missing person reports, obituaries, even archived Reddit threads, but he found one match: Amanda Destry, 32.7881N, 96.7836, W. Died September 18, 2023. Shot in the parking lot of a Denny's near downtown Dallas. Exact match. He tried another. Kenneth Lane, 33.1983N, 96.6672W. Drowned in lake. Lavin, 2019. Match after match. Then he got to one that hadn't happened yet. Juliana Park, 33.0572N, 96.8133W. August 28, 2025. He looked up the coordinates. They pointed to a small strip mall about 6 miles west of the store. He drove there the next day on his lunch break. Just a nail salon, a vape shop, and a dry cleaner. But behind the buildings was a drainage ditch and a wooded area. He didn't know what he was looking for. Maybe proof it was all fake. Maybe a chance to stop it. But it felt real. Too real. Then August 28th came. He turned on the news at 10 p.m. Heart thumping. A woman named Juliana Park, 29, dental assistant, mother of one, had been struck and killed by a delivery truck behind a strip mall on Parker and Coit. Driver claimed his brakes failed. Exact spot. Exact time. By the morning of August 29th, Martin hadn't left his apartment. He called in sick, then called again to say he wouldn't be back. The store didn't argue. He tried to throw away the remaining length of the receipt. He'd kept it after the cops left, but something stopped him. Every time he reached for it, he felt. Watch. Then came August 30th. He tried to stay inside all day, away from the store, from anything familiar. If the location on the receipt was the gas station, maybe he could break the pattern by staying away. He took a bus out to Garland, wandered through strip malls and libraries. Still, at 4:08 p.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number processing. Then another, a different number. No message. He turned the phone off. Back in Plano, at the Crossroads Mart, around 4:25, a fire broke out. Electrical malfunction, they said. Short in the overhead lights. Martin's replacement, Luis, a kid barely old enough to drink, was hospitalized with second-degree burns. Martin watched the footage on the news from a motel off the highway. Was supposed to be there. He stared at the receipt again. At the word processing. What did it mean? That he was next? That he'd been marked? But he hadn't died. Not yet. In the weeks that followed, the dream started. Always the same setting. Endless rows of fluorescent lit aisles, buzzing, flickering. The receipt printing nonstop into a pile that grew and grew, eventually turning into a heap that bled ink and names. His own name repeating over and over. Some nights he saw the twitchy man again, standing in the candy aisle, holding the gum. But his mouth was sewn shut. And where his eyes should have been were little printers feeding out paper strips. He stopped eating, started pacing, scratched holes in his arms without realizing. Then, one day, while passing through a pawn shop in Wiley, he saw it, a gray receipt printer, identical to the one from the store. It sat behind the counter, unplugged. "Where'd you get that?" he asked. The old man running the place looked confused. "Some guy traded it in, said it didn't work. Don't even know what it's from. Want to buy it?" Martin did. He brought it back to his motel room and plugged it in. Nothing happened for a few minutes. Then it whirred to life and spat out a slip. Just one line, "We're not done." That night, Martin disappeared. The motel door was locked from the fee. Inside, no signs of struggle. The only thing left behind was the printer, still churning paper, still listing names. Some of them are yours. Some of them haven't died yet, but all of them are still processing. It's the kind of place you pass 100 times without remembering it. Just a beat-up gas station off Highway 281, a little north of Anywhere, Texas. One of those dusty pit stops with peeling signage, flickering lights, and a single diesel pump that always looks like it's leaking something dark. They called it Redman Fuel, though the sign had long since lost the E and the yill, so it read Man Fu. Locals knew to avoid it after sundown. Not because of crime hell, there hadn't been any real crime in Anywhere for a decade, aside from the occasional drunk swinging at a jukebox, but because it got strange, not in a ghost-story around the campfire kind of way. Stranger than that. People didn't talk about it directly, not unless they were already a few drinks in and someone else brought it up first. But if you caught someone's eye while mentioning it, you might get a nod, a twitch of the mouth, a silent agreement not to press too far. I first heard about it from my cousin, Greg, who worked nights for the highway maintenance department. One night, over beers on my porch, he told me he saw a black Suburban with no plates pull into Redman Fu at 1:30 in the morning. That wasn't unusual. Long haulers sometimes took the wrong exits. But when he passed it again on his return loop 3 hours later, the same Suburban was still there. Lights off. No one inside, and no footprints in the dust. Just the vehicle, humming faintly, like the engine was running somewhere under the surface, but you couldn't hear it. The thing is, Redman Fu officially closed at midnight. Always had. The place didn't even have a digital payment system. It was cash only or nothing. I used to fill up there sometimes when I was working security. On the south side, never gave it much thought. But Greg's story stuck with me, lodged in the part of your brain that stores weird puzzle pieces without knowing what picture they belong to. I started paying attention. At first, it was just small things. Someone would mention their cousin went missing after heading back home late one night, swearing they stopped for gas near Anywhere. A few Facebook posts from travelers looking for relatives last seen near 281. I even found a Reddit thread buried deep in some forum for road trip horror stories about a guy who pulled into a gas station around midnight, only to find himself stuck there, unable to get back in his car. The doors wouldn't open, the key wouldn't turn, the lights inside flickered and buzzed, and the air smelled like burnt plastic. He said he wandered the aisles for hours, screaming for someone. The last line of the post chilled me. I still hear my name over the intercom, even now, even here. I think I never left. I knew it was probably a hoax. Some creepypasta bullshit, but curiosity's a mean thing. Like an itch under the skin. I told myself I'd just drive by. Nothing else. I wasn't going to stop. It was a Tuesday night in mid-September. Humid, thick air, the kind that clings to you. I told my wife I was heading out to check on a fence that had blown over by the south pasture. But instead I drove down to Redman Foo. The clock on my dash flipped to 11:52 as I turned off onto the service road. The place looked the same as ever, yellowed. Lights buzzing, cracked pavement, a couple of vending machines leaning like they were drunk. One flickered faintly with the Pepsi logo. The other was so caked in grime I couldn't even tell what it used to sell. I pulled into the lot. My headlights swept across the storefront, catching something in the window. A face. Just for a second, I slammed the brakes. The face was gone. There was no one inside. Or at least I didn't see anyone. I cut the engine, rolled down the window. It was quiet, no bugs, no wind. Just the low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I checked the time again, 11:58. I told myself I'd wait until midnight, then leave. Just enough to satisfy the itch dot at 12 o'clock exactly. Every light in the station went out. Not gradually gone, like someone pulled a switch. My truck died. Number. Sputter, no warning, just dead. The dashboard went black, my phone shut off in my pocket. Even my wristwatch stopped ticking dot, and then the lights inside the store came back on, but they were different. Dimmer, warmer, somehow. Like old incandescent bulbs in a basement. The sign above the door now glowed a sickly yellow. The letters no longer read Redman Foo. They weren't letters at all, just symbols. Things I couldn't decipher, like something carved into. Sandstone by hands that didn't understand English. I told myself to leave. Walk away. But when I tried to open the door, it wouldn't budge. Locked. No matter how hard I yanked or slammed against it. It stayed shut. Then the front door of the store opened. No one came out. It just swung inward, slowly. I don't know why I got out. Curiosity again. Something deeper, maybe. A feeling in my chest like something was pulling me toward it. The air inside was cold. Not like a sea cold. Like underground cold. The aisles stretched back far longer than the outside of the building. Should have allowed. Way longer. It was like walking into a Walmart disguised as a gas station. Rows and rows of shelves, but none of the products were familiar. No Coke bottles, no Lay's, no candy bars. Just plain white packaging, no logos, no text. And things inside that didn't look edible: meat with gray veins, cans filled with thick, tarry liquid, bags of something that hissed softly when you picked them up. I tried turning around. The door was gone. Not just closed, gone. Behind me was another aisle, same as the rest. And then the intercom crackled on. First just static, then a faint voice. It said my name, quiet, drawn out. Da'an. Like it was trying the shape of it out with unfamiliar lips. I froze. Another whisper. Da'an. Aisle 7. I didn't want to go. Every part of me screamed to run in the opposite direction. But there was no opposite direction, only more aisles. And somehow, my feet started moving on their own. Aisle 7 was lined with televisions. Old ones, CRTs with rounded glass and dials. They all turned on at once when I stepped in. They showed me things, not random images. Me. Moments I barely remembered. Me at age 9, breaking my sister's toy and hiding it. Me kissing my best friend's girlfriend in high school. Me, drunk, driving home from a bar and swerving into a ditch, then walking away before the cops came. Stuff no one else should know. The TVs hissed static again, and one of them showed my wife now asleep in our bed, alone, tossing. Then it showed her waking up, realizing I wasn't there, calling my name, crying. And behind her, in the shadows of our bedroom, something tall and thin and twitching began to crawl out from under the bed. I screamed. Threw something at the screen. The static didn't stop. I ran. Or tried to. The aisles had shifted, no longer straight. They twisted like a maze. The shelves leaned inward, narrowing as I moved. I heard footsteps that weren't mine, soft and wet, like bare feet slapping against tile. The intercom came on again. This time it said, "Don't leave, you belong here now." I found the frozen section. The glass doors were fogged up, but behind them I saw people, standing perfectly still, their eyes wide open, unmoving, like mannequins. But I knew one of them, a trucker named Melo who used to drink at Buck's Tavern every Friday. He'd been missing for 2 years. His lips were blue. I ran again, turned corners at random. Time lost meaning. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Then I saw the checkout counter. There was no cashier, just a register, old and clunky. Next to it, a black rotary phone dot. It rang once dot, twice dot. I picked it up. A voice said, "You never really left." "You? We're always here? You just forgot." I screamed, begged, cried. I told them I wanted to go home. The voice said, "There is no home." When I woke up, I was lying in the parking lot. Truck gone. Store dark. My phone said it was 5:12 a.m. I walked 20 miles back into town. No one believed me. They thought I'd had a breakdown. A bad dream. Maybe too much to drink. But I know what I saw, and I hear it now. Intercom dot in my dreams dot in my house. Whispering from the closet, from the TV static, from behind the curtains when the wind moves just right. Calling my name, again and again and again.